Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science DC Comics podcast, episode 579 here. And I just want to tell everybody, I don't feel so good. Oh my goodness, I can't win even by myself. I get shade thrown at me for not feeling well. But hey, everybody, here we are. And in all reality, I was going to end up recording this a lot earlier than what. Oh my goodness gracious. I meant to hit the crickets again. Edit that out. I guess Jess can. Somebody edit it out. I don't know. Hey, everybody. I was going to record this a lot earlier. And really, that really plays into the fact that I do end up releasing the podcast early access if you're part of our Patreon. And I was all fired up. I think I even said to Tom, I'm going to have this thing done by 10 a.m. I had big plans. I did have everything kind of in place, except for everything I had to record, because the minute I went to record, my son Zach, who's redoing the house here, decided to just cause mayhem and just destroy everything. It was so loud. He ended up, I swear to God, I ended up hearing some old time horn going, ooga, like there was at one point a saw going. He was using the sledgehammer on a wall, and he was blaring Led Zeppelin. It was mass chaos, it was. But all that meant is I couldn't record. And again, this was me going downstairs in the studios here, the Weird Science Black Mold Studios, at about 9:15, I think is where I went down. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. I ended up editing some things, but then, okay, I have to record. And now it is 9 at night. So it took all this time. And I've tried so many times. Every time I ended up trying to do something, some sort of power machinery. Is that what it's called? Power machinery? I was going off and nonsense. And by the way, I don't feel so good. Oh no. Hey everybody, here we are. And this is episode 579. I'm going to be joined by a plethora of people to do a plethora of books, minus or plus some, but we will have Gabe, we'll have Tom, we have Gray, Stork, Zach, me, and maybe other people. I think that might be it. That might be it there. If I ended up missing somebody, then I'm a real jerk, but I don't think I did. But we have a lot of things going on. By the way, Gabe's sus too, so we have that. And we have a bunch of books, but before we go into all of those, let me remind everybody that if you want to help us out for everything we do, please go over to our Patreon. Check that out, patreon.com/weirdscience. It will be in the show notes, a link to that. You can go and even get a 7-day free trial to see if everything there is, kosher with you. And in the meantime, we have a ton of shows. We have a ton of reading clubs. We have a ton of spotlight shows. We have just everything you need if you need DC, Marvel, indie, manga podcasts. They are there. There's a ton of them. If you are looking, say, to hear reviews for The Secret Six #1 or Shazam #21, kind of a crazy little juxtaposition, a book starting and a book ending. Maybe both should be ending. We'll have to see about that. But that was on our Patreon Spotlight. And that was me and Gabe talking about Secret Six #1 and me and Simon talking about Shazam #21. Simon, he was down in the dumps, not because the book stunk, but because he doesn't feel good. Tom, actually later, he has a cold too. Something's going around. Something's going around like London town in America. I think that it is spreading across the ocean, I guess. I don't know which way it's going to or from, but you end up, if you want to listen to Secret Six #1, me and Gabe talking, or Shazam #21, me and Simon talking about that, it's over on our Patreon. That is our Patreon Spotlight. Each week, I put up a poll with all that week's books, or at least the ones that we do talk about on the podcast. And then the badasses of the Get Fresh crew, that is the highest levels of the Patreon, they end up being able to pick which ones they want. The top 2 end up getting talked about on the spotlight, and Secret Six number 1 and Shazam number 21 were the picks. It's about an hour and 50 minutes, I think, so it has some meat on the bone. We had some fun. Gabe, who told me at one point that he's not very funny, he said to me, hey, I know that everybody thinks I'm hilarious, but I'm not really funny. And I'm like, who thinks you're hilarious, Gabe? That actually is the funniest thing he's ever said. I thought that was pretty good. But me and Gabe had a good discussion about the Secret Six, and then me and Simon just shook our head at one of the weirdest endings for a series in Shazam number 21. But with all that, we have to get to a little shout out, little fist bump, a little bit of a badass roll call. And I will give a shout out to everybody. Anybody on the Patreon, even the people listening. A lot of people have reached out since Eric left, and a lot of people have actually joined the Patreon or even upped their level, and I do appreciate that very much. And most of them even getting hold of me and just saying they appreciate the show continuing, and sad that Eric's going, but the idea that it still goes on. But here is the spotlight. I'm not going to get to the end of this one. Sean M., Edward Hawa, he went up to badass. Thanks, Ed. Andrew Belfast, don't mention it. D-Man 3001, David Fink, Jack Halsey, Brandon, Nick Rust, Brian Trevitt, or just Trevitt to me and you, Tom Johnson, Dan Smith, JLG, Big Z, The Mark Claire Show, The Annihilator, Ted Probst, I Love Punchline, I really do, Stork, Michael S., Matt Razor, Dr. Matt Razor, Niels Tiort, Stephen Baum, Jason Colby, Sue42, to you and me, Mike G, Ken Halleck, Comic Boom Rocky. I reached out to him. I'm hoping to have him on the show as well. Mark Jager, Ruben back up as a badass as he belongs. He is a badass through and through. Carlos, oh my goodness, I did. Now here we go. See, where's Eric, the yellowy? Actually, I should get a soundbite of Eric huffing. And I don't mean like, that sort of huffing. I mean in frustration. I think that's why he left. He left probably because of how I ruin the badass roll call every week. We'll go back to Carlos, 2 of Marv, Luke Hollywood, Simon, Luis, Manship. I'm losing track. I'm having problems. I would have been real on at 10 a.m. Swanee, Josh Million, Batman, Beyond a Mark, Brandon B. Murray. He is up there in Canada. That's Buffalo, Canada. And Double Aaron, doxing his ass in Minnesota. Shout out to the all-time greats, Reginald Drinkwater, and Rob Lewis, and little shout out, Eric Shea. Boom. He's now on the all-time greats list, I think, and that's it. Get this song off. We got things to do, and I did mention that when Eric did leave that I wanted to change things up. I did say it's going to be a gradual process. It's going to take a couple shows, whatnot, to get everything kind of set, but this episode, you're going to see there's going to be a little bit of changes going on after I start or stop rambling on here. We're going to go off to some news. Then we're going to get in the books. But me and Stork actually are doing a retro review. So there's going to be a bunch of things. And I have a bit of a surprise review coming up. Just me, myself, and I, my 3 least favorite people in the world. I'll be reviewing a book on my own, but we do have a bunch of books. We do have a bunch of guests. I like to call them guest stars because they're stars in my eyes, but we're going to go off right now to the news.
The news.
It is time for the news. Some of it, which, it's not breaking news, but we can hit that because I love that sound effect. We have 3 news items here. The last one's not really a news item, but more about sales, but we'll get into that because we have to start out with what is kind of a boys' toys type thing. And if you know me, you know I'm an adult. I don't play with toys. I am a grown man. But some people who listen, they do play with toys. And also that goes hand in hand with DC and now also Mattel, because Mattel gets the DC license. This is a little bit older bit of news. I'm still going to say it's breaking for me. Right over the knee, I break it. Mattel Incorporated, Warner Brothers Discovery Global Consumer Products. That is a mouthful. Doesn't have a great mouthfeel, that one. It does say Warner Brothers Discovery Global Consumer Products. By the time they are done saying that name, I have already left or asleep. I don't have a really great attention span. I don't know if oh, no. They've signed a multi-year licensing agreement for Mattel to produce DC action figures, play sets, accessories, role-play products, and now it's getting sexy in here. That meant role-playing games. I thought it was more like but adult collectibles. Who knows what that means? I think everybody knows what that means but me, because I think it's sexy. Beginning in the second half of 2026, the companies announced the license includes all DC stories, characters, and all channels. Every channel is involved. Currently, DC toys are being produced by Spin Master, which legitimately was my DJ name in Cleveland back in the 80s. Spin Master J. They called me a McFarlane Toys. Now, that doesn't have a joke to it. We look forward to leveraging our Mattel playbook approach to brand management, product design, and innovation to bring DC's popular characters to life across all channels. You're selling toys, pal, because that was from Mattel SVP of Entertainment Partnerships, Nick Karamanos. This whole these titles and this jargon, like you're selling toys, say, hey, this is going to be pretty damn cool. We love the DC stuff. We're going to make the shit out of this. We're going to make toys. We're going to make adult role-play products. This is going to be crazy. This guy got real dry with that. It's so impressive. We look forward to leveraging our Mattel playbook approach to brand management, product design, and innovation to bring DC's popular characters to life across all channels. He said in the statement accompanying the announcement. I want it to be a press conference. And they're like, anybody have any questions? He got it too. Robert Oberschlepp, head of Warner Brothers Discovery Global Consumer Products. What are these titles? I swear to God, each guy's going to have one less. So there's a head of Warner Brothers Discovery Global Consumer Products. The other guy's just head of Warner Brothers Discovery Global Consumer. Then it goes global. This guy emphasized that expressions of the characters from across media will be available for Mattel products. Here's his quote. It wasn't a great week to start news, by the way. Our collaboration with Mattel will lead to all new offerings celebrating DC's rich legacy and future storytelling across publishing, animation, TV, and film, he said. Every story and character from Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman's heroics to Joker and Harley Quinn's troublemaking. Now, there you go. Is he talking about Harley Quinn farting up the joint? Is that what he means by the troublemaking? Because she's kind of more a hero now. But in the meantime, I don't know that I'd call what Joker does troublemaking. But I guess when you're selling toys, they're not going to celebrate. And to the Joker's straight up murder, be pretty good, is prime inspiration for a new partnership that combines the power of Mattel and the global appeal of DC. Just after he said that, I believe that our man, Nick Karamanos, is like, but Mattel has global appeal too. And he's like, you shut your mouth. You ain't DC. You shut it or this thing's out. We're done. See, I'm adding drama to it because this is a pretty dry story. The agreement expands the relationship between Mattel and Warner Brothers Discovery, which includes, and these are some big things. I mean, you think of the toys and all the fun you could have with toys like Ted Lasso toys. Hoo-wee. I'm going to get me my Ted Lasso figures out. I like Ted Lasso, but I don't know that I would get any sort of figure. But also Harry Potter. I hear that's pretty popular. Friends is all in capitals too. Every letter. Seinfeld. There you go. And more across the preschool, plush, dolls, vehicles, games, and novelty toy categories. Way too many categories for grown people to be buying, is what I say. That's just me.
How dare you?
I'm an adult, so I'll give you the news, but I'm not going to end up getting it. Maybe I would. I ended up getting some toys in the mail from Matt Rapier, and they're pretty cool. I'm actually, a little shout out to him. I'm building a shelf to put those on. I hope that I'm better at building a shelf than doing the news, is what I'm going to say, or those things are in trouble. But he sent me some pretty cool ones. Ended up sent me two different Guy Gardner. One that's in his Green Lantern deal and one in kind of the Warrior deal. It's pretty cool, but I'm an adult. Here's the next item. I was going to say up for bid, but that's not appropriate. DC Absolute Comics Go Vertical. I actually made this thing, and I was hoping that it would sound more like an extreme skateboarding thing or something, but I didn't give it enough oomph when I said it. So DC Comics will offer 3 of its top all-in titles to its DC Go vertical scroll web comics platform. Now, I think that maybe, I know it's the DC Go, but that it really does remind me of Teen Titans Go, and I think it might be something that maybe adults like me might shy away from, thinking that it's not what it is, that it's something different, right? Also, I think I load up this app and it steals my wallet and probably punches me. I don't know how technology works nowadays. Absolute Batman by Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta. Absolute Wonder Woman by Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman. And Absolute Superman by Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval will all be available as webtoons, available to paid subscribers to the DC Universe Infinite digital service. The first chapter of each will also be available for free without a subscription. So there you go. If you want to dip your toe into the Absolute Universe and read it in one of the worst possible ways for that, because it wasn't made to be vertical. It wasn't made for the webtoon thing. I tried. I know that webtoons are, really popular. Right? But first off, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an adult. But also with that, I tried to do it. I actually saw this the other day on the app that I wanted to cancel, and it freaking gouged me. That thing is expensive. But I ended up trying to do it. I don't like it. I don't like going up and down. Even when I do manga, when I do stuff with my man Luke Hollywood, we do stuff from Manga Plus, the app. And if you do like manga and you don't have the Manga Plus app, you have to get it. It's great. But you have an option of, horizontal or vertical scrolling, just, normal. It's not really webtoony, but you do that. I can't read comics doing that vertical deal. I never could do it on my phone, nothing like that. I need the horizontal. I like to get horizontal in this joint. I like to do that. Also, I am one who I cannot use the guided view. That guided view, I say this, and some people get it, some people don't, but when I read it, it gives me reading claustrophobia. I get all anxious and stuff like that, and I need to see. I mean, when we end up recording the podcast, I need to have, well, first off, I have a big TV for the monitor because I can't see for shit. But I also need to have 2 pages up at all times because I can't remember shit either. I'm a wreck. I don't know if you know this, but I don't feel well. And so with that, I need everything, and I can't use that guided view. I don't need a guide anyway. I'd tell you what I am, but I won't say it. But that's what it is. If you are interested, if you want to see how that is, if it's kind of a neat little, let's see this gizmos and gadgets deal, and we'll go up and down. Up and down it is, but it's okay. But the first chapter free, so you can check that out. If you haven't, you get that Extreme Batman AF, right? And then you get the Wonder Woman in Hell, and you get the Superman, who I still don't know what's going on with him, but we'll be having him next week. Me and Gray doing the Absolute podcast now, and I am looking forward to maybe learning a little bit of what makes that Superman tick, besides the dust cape, which sounds weird. Here is the last bit of news, and it is sales. It's the top 10 comics from February. Now, before I continue, I will let everybody know these are numbers that ICV2 end up posting. They have the top 200 if you pay. They have the top 50 if you don't. So, I've seen the top 50. I'm a cheap man. But when you get these numbers, they're not definitive. They're not actual full out sales numbers. They are a very small base. They're a very small sample size of about 125 to 130 shops, but they are direct sales. And that's kind of cool. It's not just the idea that back in the day when you'd get some numbers, you would have Marvel, I think, was more doing this than DC, but they both ended up doing it at points, the idea of over shipping something. And that was where you got the old numbers. It was just shipping numbers, not sold. So having the sale numbers, that's kind of cool. The problem being, though, is that if a book comes in the last day of the month, if it just happens where Wednesday's that last day, you only have that one day of sales. So that messes things up. And again, you can't really go with it. You take it with a grain of salt. But what I like to say is that you get a little bit of trends. You see, if a book is a real bomb, it's not going to end up in the top 10. It just won't. But, you kind of go with that. So here is the top 10. And with that, it really shows that readers kind of like non-continuity universes. Maybe universes you might call ultimate or absolute, because that seems to be the deal. Number 10 actually shocks me. Number 10 is from Marvel. It's X-Men number 11, Jed MacKay writing that. Not a big fan. Ruben has told me just today that it is picking up a bit. I'd have a lot of catching up to do because I have not been reading that for quite some time. I kind of just bailed. I think like issue number 3 or 4. I ended up it was boring to me. It wasn't really doing it for me. And Jed MacKay is a writer that I like, I don't love. And I do think that he, hit solid gold with Moon Knight. I hear that's getting better, but I dropped that as well. But his other stuff, not great, though I did love, and I get criticized for it sometimes, I did love his Black Cat, the first part, the first volume of that. Then they kept bringing it back. It got wonky, but there you go. There's a lot of background with the X-Men number 11. Number 9 is the Energon universe, and it's distributed out by Image. It's Transformers number 17. You got, I believe, Jorge Corona and Daniel Warren Johnson on that. People are loving it. I stopped reading Transformers because I have no connection with the Transformers. And I kept getting to that play where you'd get a cliffhanger and people would be like, oh my God, Beachcomber. I'm like, who? Or it's like, oh my God, did you get that? Like, there's Cybertron. And it just wasn't hitting with me because I had no connection. It's one of those, this is where I say this a lot, where I recognize that it's good. It just wasn't hitting with me because I didn't have the background. And I really don't, if people would be there, well, you could read this, you could do that, you could watch that. I really don't really care to get it. I don't want to sound like a dick or anything, but I'm not really that interested in the Transformers. I have never seen the cartoon. I have never watched any of the movies. I'm just not interested in it, but maybe someday. Maybe. Number 8 is the first DC book on this list, Batman 157. So Chip Zdarsky, sayonara sucker. And he is out, and it ended up where at one point it seemed to fall out of the top 10, which is crazy, but it's back. But Batman at 8, not great. Again, these aren't definitive, but I do think that Batman has slipped. Not many people that I talk to were really talking a lot about Chip Zdarsky's Batman. And when you end up where people will talk about things, but when I say that, a lot of times I mean the idea when you say to somebody like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, you like comics? What are you reading? And the first things that they say are the things that they're usually really excited about. And I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff that comes out of people's mouths right away are indie stuff, Transformers, the Ghost Machine stuff, Conan, that sort of thing comes up a lot more than it ever did before in my mind. But that's the stuff you get excited about. If somebody says like, hey, like, what are you reading at DC? Right away, I know what I would say. But then after that, I'd have to think, because what I would say right away is Batman and Robin. Oh man, I'm reading Batman and Robin. Oh, what else? And then pretty much everything. But what I'm enjoying, I'm a Green Lantern, and Aquaman starting out pretty cool. Like, you start to, not hem and haw, but you start to struggle with trying to figure out what you read. But those first things, and not many people I think are saying Batman right away. Oh my God, Chip Zdarsky's Batman. It just wasn't that great. But what they might be saying soon is Hush 2, because Gabe, who we'll be hearing from in just a moment, Sus Gabe really went out on a limb, and he was in our Slack, and he ended up where when the Hush 2 was announced, me and Tom were thinking about it, and Tom said that he remembers something along the lines that Gabe, like immediately when that was announced and somebody put the news article in the Slack, he ended up like putting fail or bomb or and then he said it's not going to sell. By the way, if we do this next time there's sales, number 1 will be Hush 2, because they already announced it had like 400,000 pre-orders, so people are going to buy it. And whether they're buying it for covers, whatever, still going to buy it. So, Gabe, you are sus and you are wrong. Number 7, another DC book, Absolute Wonder Woman. Number 5, I will tell you, and maybe it is because of where it came out and whatnot, but I'm actually surprised that Absolute Wonder Woman is selling less than Absolute Superman, because most people that I talk to, they're not really liking Absolute Superman. Absolute Superman seems to be the book that people get angry about. Absolute Wonder Woman, people are maybe scratching their head a little confused, but The hate in my mind goes to Absolute Superman, but we'll get to that in a little bit because the next one, number 6, is Ultimate Spider-Man, number 14, a huge issue. I won't spoil it. And I'll just shout out, too, if you're not aware or just showed up out of the blue, we also have a Marvel Comics podcast, too. In fact, we have a regular Marvel Spotlight podcast that I do with my man, Matt, and we always talk about Ultimate Spider-Man. And there's also a X-Men podcast. I mentioned Ruben earlier, but the Weird Dose of X is Jason and Ruben, and they talk about the old X-Men, which we already talked about as well here. So check those out. And if you want it, there's a link in the show notes to the Marvel stuff, or just look up Weird Science Marvel. That's just a little commercial there. Number 5 is the Ultimates book. Ultimates number 9. I have a nickname for this book. People, when, you have things going, you have, nicknames. Bullshit is my nickname. I hate the book. I can't stand it. I know there's going to be people hearing this like, oh my God, it's so great. No, it's not. But if you say so, that's fine for you. That is hot garbage. It is a book that needs an editor to reel in Dennis Camp, and Dennis Camp needs to allegedly stop smoking so much pot because this guy is all over the place and I don't like him and he blocked me and he needs to wash his hair is what the whole play there is. And I'll just move on from that because that book got me called a lot of names this week. Number 4, Ultimate Wolverine number 2. That's Chris Condon. I said after that first issue, I wasn't really down with it. And a lot of people agreed with me then with the second issue. I'm not so sure this book's going to do much except say, hey, there's Wolverine in this universe now. Maker's coming and he'll be able to fight. That's all it seems. Number 3 is Absolute Superman. Said earlier, it actually shocks me that it's that high because, like I said, people seem to get mad at it. You end up having Dust Cape it is. And and Lois, badass Lois, like putting that baton in that guy's mouth. That's one of the things, and the things will keep coming up because Eric just left recently, but Eric had no problem with somebody jamming a baton, like a stun rod baton in somebody's mouth. I don't know. I think Eric might have been off. Maybe that's why he left. He needed to go and like calm down or something. Maybe the whole play. There was somebody on Twitter or actually on YouTube, because Eric's standing up for all serial killers in the world that, they can kill if they feel slighted. I think that's what he said. And the guy on YouTube said, I think Eric's a serial killer. Maybe that was it. We got too close to the truth. He had to run. Maybe he was on the run. He'll probably never talk to me again, so I will not know. Number 2, One World Under Doom. Number 1, the Marvel A Big Event. Not great, but it's number 1. It's an event. You have Doom there doing the whole take over the world. Sorcerer Supreme as well, which didn't really get stressed much. And it's Ryan North, and I did really like it. And the tie-ins have been utterly just unnecessary. Unnecessary. That's the worst 2 words you can ever say for an event, right? Number 1's Absolute Batman. Number 5, it's a huge hit. It's a huge hit. And again, when people start talking and you end up saying, oh man, I hate this Absolute Batman. Somebody said it this week. They said, I like Metamorpho better than Absolute Batman. I'm like, that's fine for you. But one's a little bit more important and selling a little bit more. And I say important in the whole scheme of DC Comics because they need some hits. And there you go. DC, Absolute all the way. So we get that and a little smidgen of Batman. But those are the top 10 comics of February. Again, I'm pretty sure it's an easy bet that next month we will be talking Hush 2 as the number 1 book. So there you go. DC maybe pulling things around. Marvel always gets them in the sales and stuff like that. But that is it for the news. You can let me know if you like the news or not. A little goofy. And I have to cough really bad now, and I can't hand it off to somebody. So right now, we're going to go off, hear a little song, and I'm going to talk to Sus Gabe.
Half of these books better start going, while the other half better stop blowing. I wish they would run, but they just keep on walking. Every other page is just eating and talking. You say you're all in, but this all feels very routine. You say you're all in, but it's starting to lose its steam. Come on and do something that we can talk about. Come on and people, check it out. Check it out. Come on and do something that gets more people excited. Come on, do anything to stop fans from being so divided. I want people to check things out. I want people to check things out. I want people to check things out. But so many are just checking out.
All right, and here I am with my man Gabe. What up, Gabe?
What up, Jim? Thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're the lead, the batter. You're batting leadoff. I figured you'd be a speedy guy.
How do I keep getting pulled into these situations?
You're just going to keep getting pulled in. You're not going to get out. But here we are, and it's a weird week. This is a really odd week, especially
really odd week.
At JSA. I like the idea of Jeff Lemire doing the JSA. I don't think the book has come fully into the deal yet, but it's big enough for me to not be that weirded out that it's the first book we're talking about this week, but it kind of is because there's not a lot of big books this week. There's
no
a lot
Batman,
of these side
no
books.
Superman, no Justice League, no nothing.
Yeah, nothing. So here we are. You get to lead off again.
Fantastic.
And here we are with JSA. I'll get right into this. JSA number 5. It's a weird book, but it is written by Jeff Lemire. It's art by Diego Ortegui. Colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands. People were talking in our Slack that you go with the Patreon and talking about the art in this and saying some people like it, some people don't. I think it's okay. I don't.
Okay.
It didn't ruin it for me, but it didn't elevate it either.
It didn't.
So.
And I knew I don't know him, but I'm just saying I'm familiar with his art style when he did the Golden Age Jay Garrick miniseries about a year or so ago.
Out.
And that worked out. I wasn't sure at first, but it kind of grew on me, and I kind of liked it. It has a lot of the feel of the artist who currently does Transformers, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head for some reason. Jorge Corona. It has a kind of a Jorge Corona feel to it. When he came over to JSA, he changed the style a little bit, and it wasn't quite as good. And I'm like, what happened here? So, well, yeah.
When we get to it, when you get to the what's it called, cliffhanger page, where you actually have Jay Garrick, that looks like the style of the Jay Garrick book. And some of the parts where I think that maybe it's a little rushed, maybe he didn't have a lot of time, but some of the things aren't as detailed or has that look that he had in it. So it does kind of get a little wonky. But it didn't ruin it for me. And this book, overall, I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I would probably, if somebody really put me, and if they said, do you like it? And I said, well, yeah, because I think my gut reaction would be to say, yeah, because I like Jeff Lemire. Yeah. I liked the idea of the JSA, but if I had to explain why I liked it, I would probably have a little bit of a difficult time because all in all, I think it's still at that mid-range deal. It hasn't really gone up to a point where I can say to somebody, hey, you got to read this. I think this first way of him doing this first arc, a little bit wonky. Things are a little stretched out. You have a huge team and even a team of villains as well. But I think it has to settle itself down a little and tell more of an engaging story. This idea of the JSA versus the Injustice Society is okay and it's classic, but it's not really doing it for me. How about you?
Completely agree. I'm a little confused about what Lemire is doing here because it seems like, the written review will be out shortly, so it will echo a lot of the same statements. He seems to be experimenting or playing around with the structure of the plot. Because, like, in the first 2 issues, it's like he jumped ahead, and then the second issue was the flashback. It was like, why did you reverse it? Here, I like the pieces of all the subplots. I like what's going on with Dr. Midnight. I like what's going on with the Demon Dimension. I like what's going on with the Hawks and this maybe Kid Attorney. I like the pieces. The pieces aren't coming together.
Yeah, it's weird. There's no real glue. That's the problem.
It's very unfocused. It's very scattered. So I think he needs to pare away some of the some of the subplots, focus on like one thing with a couple of things on the side, and move forward. He's too much all over the place, and it's kind of like very jarring.
And when it is jarring, it ends up making each of these scenes seem a little less because you're kind of like thrown into it. And all in all, maybe what he's doing, because again, he is doing these little subplots, and maybe he doesn't want one to be, as better than the red. Like he wants them to be, and they kind of seem watered down a bit. It just ends up, that's what you need, something, because by the end, again, if I'm going to be talking to, I'm talking to you, but if somebody said, oh, what cool thing happened in this issue? It's like, well, you had this cool, but it's okay. And then you have this that could be cool. And then that's it's okay. And all in all, it just ends up, like you said, feeling very scattered. But I'm with you, though. I like the individual things. I like seeing this new Kid Eternity in hell, saving
maybe
Carter.
A Kid Eternity.
Yeah, maybe. She doesn't understand what's going on, but that's a neat little mystery of itself, where she then goes and gets Carter Hawkman out. He needs to find his wings. And even then, she says, and
Are you an angel?
Are you an angel? I'm like, oh my God. And says, hey, let's go find these things. And then Kendra comes in. I like that Kendra comes in and she's like, I'm here to save the day. They're already kind of going. But they then get attacked by, the big play of the demons. And again, it's just, you kind of stop things when they're just getting good a lot of times in this book. It kind of plays out in that way a lot, right?
I mean, if you sit down and work it out on paper, this arc has maybe 4 or 5 separate mysteries happening at the same time.
Yeah.
You have who's Kid Eternity? What's going on with Obsidian and Jakeem? What's going on with Johnny Sorrow? What is the ISA after? As far as like they need these ancient relics like the Spear of Destiny and the Helmet of Fate. And it's like, it's too much. It's too much. It's too much on my mental plate. You gotta focus it up a little bit.
And even if the play is, I came up, I thought if this was clever, nobody seemed to go with it. I always get upset. But I said at one point, Eric didn't even bat an eye, but if you have a book where there's more mysteries than there's issue numbers, there's a problem. There's too much going on. I thought I was blowing minds there. But in the meantime, you could go, and it's funny because this whole arc is called Ragnarok. So you could go basically, well, the Injustice Society wants to bring on the end of it, but you need more than just the end, because every villain wants to, bring down the end of everything, whatever. And you're right. When you go through it, you are there for these little moments of this, but it doesn't come together as a cohesive whole yet.
Because your attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. You can't focus.
And I mean, even the idea of Hawkman, the idea he's in hell, they have taken his wings, they have the nth metal, all that, but all in all, you're just there to see him getting saved, but you never sit there and think, well, now that he's saved, that's cool, because then that can't happen, it just, he's there. Kid Eternity, maybe, and Kendra, and you're like, okay, then you move on, and everything just feels like, and then you move on, and then you move on, and you can't really connect the things. And again, there's some cool characters. I like Gentleman Ghost and Solomon Grundy. I do like that Solomon Grundy legitimately says something more than Born on a Monday. I mean, that's all they ever do. And he says, Grundy smell hell. And I like that Gentleman Ghost, like, yeah, let me do the talking there, pal. I thought it was funny. But then you have
I'm just glad Grundy recovered after Donna Troy ripped his heart out in the Wonder Woman series.
That is true.
I'm glad he's all better from that, because it looked like that hurt a little bit.
And that might have hurt a bit, and also made him forget that he was kind of a good guy in the Poison Ivy series. This is the synergy that me and you were talking about in the spotlight, because of this nonsense. But there he is, and he's the heavy hitter. But I do like Gentleman Ghost. And you end up where they go on their, hey, what's going on? We're looking for, Dr. Midnight and all these things going on. And they're like, hey, you go that way, turn left at Albuquerque and whatever. But the idea of there's this young spirit, and actually, the idea of the Hawkman and Kid Eternity and things, that's what they're actually going. It says there's a young spirit with them. And that's where you get, Jim Craddock says, hey, I'm pretty good at tracking down Ghost. He gets on his horse like I like that Gentleman Ghost now thinks he's something special. But he's like, all right, get the horse out. I am now the sheriff in town, and they're going to go off and try to find them. It's fine. But again, you end then. You really are just setting up a scene to then go to the next setting up a scene. And,
and if you think through all the subplots that happen in this issue, none of them are resolved. They're just furthered, like to get to the next step in that little mini journey, but then they're just like, okay, so now I've got to pay attention to these 5 or 6 things, and
it's
so
tough.
not sure where to focus.
And I'll tell, Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite writers, so I do think that these things will be all tied up. Everything will make sense, whatnot. Maybe not like you want them to, but I do think that this will happen. The idea, and you just kind of piqued my interest a bit there, Gabe. By the way, my compass goes south. I just wanted to mention that this week again.
Man,
but in the meantime,
that's a leftover. Don't pay attention to that guy.
In the meantime, though, I think that one of the plays of a really good writer, which I think Jeff Lemire is where you have all these loose threads. You got to at least tie one up. You can't keep adding. You got to do that play with maybe you have 5 loose ends. You tie up 2, introduce a new one. You have to lessen some things. You have to make it feel to me as a reader that it was worth reading this issue because something was resolved, something that I was wondering, something, even if it's resolved to set up a next mystery, you do need something to make it feel like it was worthwhile. That you ended up in this book just feels like it's always out of my reach, especially because some of these characters I don't know. I am not a lifelong fan of the JSA, or I've read comics most of my life like some people. So I end up coming into this and I'm getting there gradually. But again, loose ends are starting to get frustrating. And so you even have the idea, like you said, of Obsidian and Jakeem, where you're in Obsidian's dream, but he's also being grabbed by Dr. Midnight, who's dragging Obsidian away, ends up with a Savage, what's her name? She gets knocked out. Scandal Savage. I was going to call her Scarlet Savage. Scandal Savage gets knocked out, so she's upset. All these things going, and you kind of have your head spinning. It really is tough overall, but you go back to the JSA, and now you have, I'm telling you, Obsidian, who's actually Johnny Sorrow. He's trying to go and realizes, oh my God, yeah, there's Dr. Midnight. He's got to stop this. This is obviously him going and trying to stop things in its tracks before things are revealed, because she knows that Dr. Midnight knows the jig is up here and might reveal some stuff. But
no, it's a little odd to me. I mean, I'm not a Scandal Savage aficionado, but I seem to hear more complaints more than any other character about the way Scandal is portrayed in this comic. So just for some reason, people are like expecting her to be some kind of bloodthirsty mercenary who only does things for cash. I was like, well, okay, so why is she hanging out with a team? He's like, well, she's a villain. I don't know.
And maybe the idea,
she's probably getting paid. I don't think she's going to do this for free. So.
No, I think she's getting paid. And I think that you even kind of see that she doesn't get along with the rest of the team, and the team isn't getting along anyway. But in the meantime, they're trying to get the same play off of the JSA, and they're trying to get a family pretty much to go against each other. And it's working. I mean, it is working so far. But, Obsidian / Johnny Sorrow, they're going to go off and go with it, but you end up having our man who says, I don't think this is right. This doesn't seem right. Like, what you're doing seems really like half-cocked and going. So he stays behind, only to stay behind so that there's somebody to tell Jade what is going on and what Obsidian's doing. But they seem to think that Jesse's the one who's acting all weird. It's very odd throughout all this. Like, the idea that Jade cannot get the idea. She just thinks that her brother is, a hothead and whatnot, which is a past continuity type deal that Eric had talked about. But again, it feels weird because then you go to her and Sandy here, they're with Jakeem's body, just to remind you that Of the Mind is just taking place in the mind, but Jakeem's still there in his coma, but Dr. Midnight's gone. So, hey, how did Scandal get in? Who did this? Whatever. And it all leads back to, I need to talk to my brother, but he's gone. I'm telling you, this issue is like, it is all over the place pretty much, but yet it's not, because nothing gets resolved. But
I mean, I would say to Lemire's credit, I mean, it is all over the place just structurally as far as which plot thread is doing what, but you can still follow it. I'm not confused about what's happening.
And
I think you're the same way.
Some names, but it's because there's so many names and some of the characters that I don't talk about a lot. But you're right. It's not like confusing. I'm saying at the end that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. It does. It makes sense what they're doing. It's just plodding forward so slowly, and nothing's getting resolved in the way that you kind of need to have something going on this far in. We're at issue 5. Some of these things should tie up. And again, I don't think
we're at issue 5 and we still don't know what the ISA is doing.
No. And overall, I think that this is a book that should be talked about more, but it's not. I don't hear anybody talking about it. So even if
I was looking forward to this title. When it was announced that Lemire was going to be on JSA, I'm like, oh, I want to check that one out. And I mean, I won't say I'm disappointed. I would just say I kind of wish it was better.
That's the problem. I think that I had high expectations and they haven't gotten to them yet. I'm waiting for it to get real. I'm waiting for that issue that I'm wowed, that I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for. This is awesome. This is cool. And that's an awesome moment. And I hope it comes. I trust them enough to think it may, but it's just not there yet. Because then you go back to the ISA. They're there at their table. None of these guys get along, whatnot. And the whole play of Scandal even coming back. It's like, hey, we gotta do what we're gonna do. The idea that Dr. Midnight has escaped with, Obsidian's body. We got to go do this. She's pissed off. Everybody's arguing. You end up having, this Fog, Mad Gasser. He's like, I want to get that sand. Like everybody has their own little thing, which you're supposed to see the cracks in this whatnot, but it's just, I don't know. It's just not that interesting yet. It's not interesting in the idea because I can't grasp exactly what they are doing, what the plan is, and what this means. So all in all, it basically is just little vignettes of characters that I enjoy. And by the end, I'm like, all right. And then they're like, we're going to take down the Tower of Fate, which is what they wanted to do from the very beginning. And you go and see this. And the art, again, this should be something that wows you. This spread page, it's okay. It's not bad, but it's just not the oomph that I expected. Yeah. You have a really good cliffhanger page. When you do see Jay Garrick, Alan Scott, Dr. Fate there.
It's almost a little too sketchy.
Yeah.
It's a little too sketchy. And somebody else reminded me, another question that somebody brought up that I hadn't even thought about. The Fog is on the ISA.
Yeah.
Is this the same Fog that was fighting with Alan Scott, or not Alan Scott, the original Sandman in the miniseries from last year?
That's the one.
Wouldn't he be like 80?
I'm saying that they have to explain why he hasn't aged as much, and it must be the sand powers of the Fog.
Yeah, because that was the 1940s. That was 80 years ago, and he would have been 20 or 30, so...
Yeah. You have him.
He'd be over 100 by now.
Yeah, you have Dr. Elemental from the Jay Garrick book, and you have, what's her name? Sokov, the Red Lantern.
Oh, the Red Lantern, but that's what's her face's daughter. Yeah,
she's a daughter. So, but those are the ones that carried over. And I didn't think that Lemire did a really great job of maybe introducing those to readers who didn't read those minis.
Now, Wotan is Wotan. So
Wotan's Wotan. And again, he's kind of leading the show. At one point, I thought maybe Johnny Sorrow would, but Johnny Sorrow's just impersonating Obsidian at this point. And again, in this, though, you end up having all these threads still. The idea, and even adding the idea that Obsidian / Johnny Sorrow is going off to take care of Dr. Midnight. You have just Hawkman. You have the Tower of Fate. You have all these things going. You need some resolution. It might be too many things to resolve at the end of an arc. That seems to be next issue, but we'll see. And even then, that's a smart thing when you have these things to leave one or two ongoing things to keep going. But there's a lot. We had the Kid Eternity thing. This issue, there's a lot of things going on in this, and it's crazy. But I don't hate it. I just want to, like you said it, I want to like it more. I really want to like it more because it has that, it scratches that itch that I know that I could. It's just not there yet, but what would you give it?
Let's see. I haven't published a review yet. It is coming out, but I'll be consistent about it. I gave it a 6.5. Because again, I like the individual pieces. I want them to come together better. If he can straighten that out now, issue 6 is supposed to be the end of the first arc. I mean, I think in just general terms, there is absolutely no way Lemire can take all these pieces and wrap them all up in a single issue and make it feel satisfying and not rushed and all that other stuff. So if he can do it, my hat's off. He's a miracle worker. Good for him. Yeah. But there's no way. I mean, I would be shocked.
You would assume that the little things of that, but again, I don't think even Obsidian being Johnny Sorrow, I don't think that could, but I think that Hawkman's save, you'll get Kid Eternity like trying to figure out on the team and maybe getting the team of the JSA back in one bit and then resolve the rest. But even then, there's a lot going on. The Tower of Fate. All that, we'll see. But I think 6.5 is a perfect score. I think that it is in that play where it is good. It's not great yet. There's a lot of things that need to get better, but it's got that. And I'll tell you, my moral compass, it does go south. But my compass on this book is actually, if you pushed me and said, are you more going up or down on this? I would say that I'm going up. I think that it's going to get better. I'm looking for it to get better so I can see it being something not like, oh man, this stinks and it's going to get worse. So
if you can wrap up at least most of the threads in the next issue, and then start a new arc, maybe with a little, leftovers, but minor leftovers, and then come at it with a clean, focused story, I think we're going to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I do too. I think we might get there. We'll see. We'll be talking about it, so we'll see when it comes up. But thanks for joining me, Gabe. Before we go, let everybody know where you can be found all over the internets.
Well, obviously, right, Weird Science. So if you go to the Weird Science sites, that's where you're going to find all the written stuff that I do. But for everything else, so if you're interested in non-Big Two comics, Dynamite, Zenoscope, Mad Cave, Titan, all the Conan stuff, right? That's all the big hitters right now. Go over to Comical Opinions, all one word, on all the socials, and also comicalopinions.com. Come on over. We'd love to have you, and we'll be happy to talk comics anytime.
Yep. And I've had people who have said to me, just, personally said that Gabe is doing great work, and I agree.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You are an angel.
Are you an angel?
You're a sus angel, but you are an angel. And again, one of the things that I do want to stress too, with the whole changes and things like that, I'm not opposed to talking about some things on this podcast that aren't exactly DC. Obviously, DC, I'm not saying we're going to review a million things, but if things come up, and if you aren't reading some of the indie stuff right now, you're missing out, because a lot of people, even people who are like almost done with comics, the big two has really turned them off, and they're, holding on because of the indie stuff, the Energon, the Ghost Machine, and even the stuff Space Ghost, the Conan stuff is great. And people would know, if you're a long-time listener, me and Jim Zub had a bit of a feud going that he didn't quite know of. But when he resolved it, whatnot, I was happy, because that Conan book's great. One of the best books of the past 10 years. It's awesome. And if you're not reading it and have any sort of interest in stuff like that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because it is really good. And again, if you want to see, go and read Gabe's reviews. Just don't read his G.I. Joe reviews, because they're sus.
Man, they're killing you with that colorist. Jordy Belair, if you hear this, straighten yourself out, please.
People get mad at me because I'm not really into the Transformers stuff, but that's just because I'm not really that learned in the old Transformers. So I don't know
I have
much
to know
of
everything. I have to know everything.
So with all of that, check out Gabe stuff. So we're going to go off. I actually don't know just yet what we're going off to, but we'll continue on with somebody and some book. And continuing on, I'm here with my man Tom. What up, Tom?
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
Great. You aren't feeling so well, so we'll make
I'm on the back end,
quick.
But yeah, let's
that
let's
sounds
get through
sexy.
This.
I think there.
Oh.
Now, speaking of which, we're on the back end of Gabe, who we were just making fun of off the deal. And with that, we talked about, and it would be part of the news. So I've already talked about this with Gabe pretty much saying, I just want everybody to give him shade about the idea that he said that Hush 2 wouldn't sell.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What a weird take.
400,000 and going.
Yes. 400,000 people say he's wrong, is what it seems. And Gabe would then come back at that and say, well, it's probably not actually 400,000 people. People are doubling it up. So he'll try to get a win there. Right. But here we are. I ended up getting a hold of you because there's a bunch of books this week. There's a bunch of weird books, and they're what I would consider Eric books, things that
one might say the shitty ones.
Yeah, that's what I usually say. It's like the in parentheses after Eric's books. I think I even said it in Slack today.
Well, so yeah. I mean, Eric leaves the podcast, and you message me and say, "Hey, are you interested in doing some books for the podcast?" And I enthusiastically say, "Yeah."
You said anything,
and then.
Light bulb went off.
Then
I was
Tuesday,
like, I'm in.
Tuesday, you're just like, how can I fuck this guy over?
Here's the weird thing, too, about this, because I did get a hold of you on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Everybody on the show would be able to verify that I got to them later. So I actually asked you with these. I led with them because I was like, who am I going to talk about this stuff with? So it's kind of I would think that you're going to think that, I'm giving you, some props. I figured me and you went through Robin 3000. If we got through that,
that's true.
We could get through anything. Yeah. And in that, I keep forgetting, but I will mention me and Tom end up doing, and we are doing it on the regular podcast too, when we end up doing the Dark Patterns, but me and Tom do a Elseworlds podcast on the Patreon. Again, I'll keep saying patreon.com/weird science, but we end up doing a lot of things on that, and some better than others. That
It's a
Robin
mixed
3000
bag.
might be one of the worst things I've ever read.
It's not great.
No. So I figured, you know what? We got through that. We had a lot of fun. Maybe Yayo will be a little upset that we end up talking a little too long. But in that, I didn't even mention you. It's funny to mention it here. But somebody did, because I did mention, me and you mentioned Robin 3000, I think, when we did a Dark Patterns, and that was on YouTube. And somebody came back and said that they really loved Robin 3000.
Oh, well.
And me and the guy started talking about it, and he was not aware that it was a deal of something else before. And he
Tom
was
Swift,
and he was very intrigued by that. And then when I told him
well, he can go read some Tom Swift.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I said to him, that's why the Robin's named Tom. And he's like, oh my God, it all works out. He thought it was the greatest, but we did not like it. But here we are. Spoiler. I don't like these that much either, because we're talking about Two-Face, and then we're going to be talking about the Adam Project. But we'll start with Two-Face, the trial of Harvey Dent we have here. It's written by Christian Ward, art by Fabio Veras, colors by Adam Sensia, letters by Hassan Outsman El Hal, and the editor of Jessica Aberby. And in all this, one of my, really hard-hitting jokes, I like to think I'm a funny man. I say to people, like, as an artist, Christian Ward's really good.
Yeah.
As a writer, he's a pretty good artist.
Yeah.
That's the joke, because it's not great. This issue, what happens here is you have a story that's been setting up the Shadow Hand. You've been setting up this whole play where Harvey wants to kind of shed the Two-Face deal. He wants to prove that he's still worthwhile, and he wants to become a DA again. We laughed all the time.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, Harvey, but he's wanting to do it. In the meantime, the Shadow Hand has been causing problems, trying to stop it, trying to put wrenches in it.
Weird stuff, though. So what? We've got some sort of framed up love affair with the Royal Flush Gang.
Yeah, but again, what's weird about it is you say that it's weird, but it actually sets up actual cases for him to solve. So it's weird, but you just, as an aside, when you talk about this, you actually went through these. You marathon through all these issues.
They're fresh. They're hours fresh.
So I don't know why I took you as a guy who was reading this book, but again, this is where I also want to step aside and say, when me and Eric would talk about things, and I'd say to him, I think we're the only ones reading these books. And then when this comes about, he's unfortunately not going to be on the show anymore. I start asking, nobody's reading these books. I end up where this one maybe, but I asked you and you said, fine. Poison Ivy is not on the show this week because
you didn't find anybody?
No, nobody.
Dang. I was not about to read 20 issues.
No, and that's the problem is there's too many issues.
Yeah.
So, and I ended up saying, when I say to Eric that I don't think anybody's reading this, because I talked to more people than him in the whole roundabout deal, and nobody mentions these books. But here we are, Two-Face. I think me and you are now the only ones reading.
I am reading Adam Project, although I did tell you I literally, it's not on my pull list for next month. So, I guess I'm still buying it.
This Two-Face, though, again, you end up, it's a wacky book. It feels like it should be Black Label right away.
It does, yeah.
Even what you ended up having Christian Ward with that Batman Black Label book that he did, they ended up going from there, and there was a little Two-Face, I guess, in that. I ended up...
Which one was that?
It was that, what was it called? It was, remember when you ended up having Gotham Gargoyle, the grandpa book, but then Christian Ward had one as well.
Was it like that weird Cthulhu-ish?
That's what
one?
It was.
Okay,
I
know which one you're talking about.
He's known in his art and things to do a lot of cosmic horror. So it was that one. I for some reason, I keep wanting to call it Batman Odyssey, but I know it's not. I want to
say City of Madness, but I think that was Dan Waters' thing. Yeah.
In that he did, and people that Harvey was in that, and they're like, "Oh man, that was cool." So you get a Black Label book that then lets you do this, but this is an all-in deal, and just still feels like an Elseworlds book. And I think that by the end, me and you talked before, I think that's what people are going to think about it as. I don't think this, because you get an origin of Harvey here, where some people might think, "Oh, it's cool." It actually ends up giving you a more sympathetic side of Two-Face, not Harvey. Yeah. And I don't need that, but if you do, that's fine. But what it also does is it goes a bit against what most people say is the definitive version of Harvey's, deal, especially when he's growing up and his father flips a coin to end up seeing if he's going to get beat or not. That's the standard deal. But in this, his mother's still around. Most of the origins, his mother is dead or gone, and it makes it so he can't get out of that. This somehow, or for some reason, Christian Ward wants to have the mother in there. Now, in the meantime, me and you were both talking about what we thought. We were just talking, before about what we think is the definitive origin, what would be the issue that we would read. And I end up saying, oh, it's this one deal, Eye of the Beholder is the story. And you said, I remember that the one I read was like an annual from like 89. I'm like, I think we're talking about the same thing. It ends up being the Eye of the Beholder was a Batman Annual number 14 from 1990. So you were right on with it. But that ends up being most of the things that you get are from that. Some people, you have the Long Halloween story and stuff like that with all. But in the meantime, there's no real reason to change things up. You can go a sympathetic angle for Two-Face. That's fine. But he changes things up. But then in the whole thing, you just read the other issues. Does this fit? Suddenly,
no, it's such a cool down for being, it's issue 4. Like there's 2 more issues left. And I guess we don't really have a full understanding of what is going to be going on from issue 3 where it ended, which was, I'm sure everyone has not read.
But it's that Harvey is being screwed with by Two-Face.
Yeah, Two-Face is the head of the Shadow Hand.
Now, in that, I just want to point out, it seemed that Eric thought there was 3 faces going on. I think he was completely wrong, and it makes me giggle. But the idea of Harvey having Two-Face in a prison of the mind to then go, and this is something we've seen even in the recent Hulk issues. It's one of those. A lot of times what you'll do when some character has schizophrenia or multiple personalities like that, it does make it like, okay, you're going to section it off in the mind, whatnot. Christian Ward seems to get that, but then wants to really play it up that you have to nail it down of why, and it becomes, he decides it has to be the mom. But it didn't have to be, and it was always the schizophrenia, which Harvey would have, was basically from the beating. Like you end up where you're getting beat by your dad by a coin flip. You might end up getting another personality to take the beatings. That's why a lot of people have the multiple personalities. I think that's stronger than having somebody else have to I package things in and I do this, almost playing even that the mom might be abused as well by the dad because the dad's a piece of crap. But again, it's like there's the coin flip. And I think that they go too much into this where visually, you could have played the idea of just the looming thing that's always there in his mind and whatnot, but they have to have a trial, and it's Two-Face saying, I want my body.
And this is just I'm sure you agree, but of the mind issues are one of my least favorite types of any sort of narrative structure, because nothing really matters. You can say that this matters a little bit more because, thank you. Because, Two-Face is of the mind, so, it actually is a little bit more relevant than, say, a dream sequence. But
it's giving you a different, and again, some people might say they don't care, this is kind of fine or whatever. I'm looking, and there's people giving it 10s, and it just feels like, to me, you got to get past this. I know, like most people, and if you're going to tell the origin, it's Two-Face. Most people know it. You do it right at the beginning, you do it real quick or whatever, but it has been set up to have of the mind and to have Two-Face get upset. And again, this is something that ends up, just as an aside, the full disclosure, my wife has multiple personalities because of abuse she did suffer. So it is something I actually deal with a lot. And so when you get it, one of the things is that sometimes these personalities do want to come out, but this is very surface level, very Two-Face. But again, we kind of know it. And one of the
that's the problem is it's not really breaking new ground.
No, that's the problem. And you're really slamming the brakes on a story that some people, Eric, were interested in, but you kind of like, oh, by the way, we're going to go back just to show a little bit of a Two-Face that is is he sympathetic? It's trying to be. I will not be a guy who will ever say, oh my God, poor Two-Face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, but what does this do overall, and how does this progress things?
Well, I don't know what it does overall, because in the end, we basically get exactly where we left off before. Harvey defeats Two-Face and he's locked away. or is he? You know, I mean, I thought that was the point of the entire last 3 issues.
Exactly. And in this, the only thing that I got from it was that at one point, Harvey finds out that, in fact, like Two-Face says, I snuck out this, this top of this
Yeah,
thing.
I didn't really understand what he was trying to say there.
I guess that was what he was saying, is that when Harvey, what I said when I said it to Eric, that Harvey goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And then Two-Face sneaks out of the mind prison and takes over.
Which
and
doesn't
goes
really
and does the shadow
Which
hand.
again, it just doesn't really play along with the other issues we were getting, because we get Two-Face who's desperate to escape this prison. Oh, but he has been every night.
Yeah, he has.
We just didn't know that. Okay, well, I mean, you didn't really show that.
And again, that's why I think Eric was saying the idea that they thought it was Three-Face, but it looks like that was just happening. Now, again, if you haven't, I'll probably end up in the next couple weeks for our retro review, probably do that annual with Two-Face. And I'm telling you,
that's
it's
a good
really
one.
good.
From what I remember, I really liked it. Yeah.
And maybe it's dated, maybe whatever, but I remember it being really good. Yeah. One of the biggest parts of it where, again, and maybe it's better played in an annual or one issue deal. But in the middle of something that slams the brakes, it kind of gets annoying. But his alcoholic, abusive father was flipping the coin. Later, Harvey, when he finds the coin, he realizes that it's the same side.
Yeah,
it's a trick coin. Right. So he realized at one point he thought that, oh my God, fate's against me. I have bad luck. But he realizes all it was played against. And
his dad was just an asshole.
Yes, the dad was an asshole. Two-Face in his mind, really that's the word, whatever. But that's where Harvey then takes the coin and keeps it, because he thinks that, again, if what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And he thought, okay, I got over that. Once you get the acid, though, everything kind of comes out again. And that's the big play. And there's a progression of it. This ends up just, in my mind, Christian Ward is really, I don't know, trying to wow people with this. And it doesn't really wow me, because it just goes back to an origin. It's not poorly done.
No, I don't hate it.
Some
it's
weird
just,
things. It's just why.
It's just kind of a nothing to me.
Yeah, it ends up being the idea of where it lies in this. And we only have it, if you didn't know, and I didn't gloat about it enough, the idea that this is now just a 6 issue. It's not going to continue. Christian Ward said to people on Twitter, maybe we'll get lucky. He ended up bringing up the Cypher Hellblazer book that was, and then it came back again. So he said, maybe if this ends up selling in trade, maybe we'll go, because he said he has a lot of other stories in mind. But this legit seems like it was the planned deal. Now you only have 2 more issues. Maybe some people would say, well, there's not that much going on with the Shadow Hand, but that's your main story. If there's not much, then what are you doing? And so at the end, I believe that this really shows me that it's not really anything going on here. And by the end, we'll just all forget about this. And it'll be like, remember that wacky Two-Face book? And
like we were talking earlier, I mean, what we really want is to get some sort of newly established status quo for Two-Face, because all we've been riding on lately has been Ram V's.
Yeah,
whatever. I can't even remember exactly how that went.
It was ambiguous, but Harvey took over again,
and so this kind of just is ignoring that and doing its own thing. And I don't know how. I don't think it's going to end in a way that we say, okay, this is what Two-Face is going to be like going forward for the rest of the Bat books.
I hope it does have something, but again,
I would agree, yeah.
Two-Face will go away. This is what happens with these, because remember, one of the bigger ones before that Ramvi stuff was Tomasi, when he ended up getting back to where there was the bullet.
Oh, shit, I forgot about that.
Remember the bullet? That was pretty cool. And it was the idea that he tried to kill himself, but the bullet got lodged. That's what made it.
I always forget about Tomasi's detective run.
And they ended up where they took the bullet out, and then he was cured again. This is what keeps happening, though. And every time he shows up again, he starts from square one. But the square one is what everybody knows. What we get in this issue. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's what sucks is that I like semi-anti-hero Two-Face. I like a straight villain Two-Face, but it feels like we keep yo-yoing between them. I think we need to settle on one for a little bit. I don't know.
I'm just guessing, because he was in the original Hush story, that we're going to see Two-Face show up in Hush 2. And he's probably going to be doing...
That's this month, isn't it? Isn't that like
so
2
I'm
weeks
assuming he's going to show up and he'll probably be doing that. Remember in the first Touch, he got plastic surgery and he was part of the dupe and things like that. So it's a crazy deal. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. But by the end, I don't really know even that much to talk about here.
I don't either. Like we could go through the narrative, but like I mean, it's not much.
Same. Yeah, it's the same.
It's of the mind. It's of the mind origin of Two-Face, and there's
with
not
his
really
mom more involved.
With his mom more involved, which seems like she's like a little bit more of a I don't know, positive force, but which doesn't also really make sense because then so what it kind of talks about is that like Two-Face was what he was presenting to his dad. And then when he went back to his mom, he was able to like recover his Harvey Dent persona. In a way, I mean, it's not exactly like down like that, but at the end, it's his mom, and she's comforting the Two-Face. So I don't really understand.
That's the crazy
what's
deal.
going on there.
It seems like, and she even says at the one point she has a weird mask and stuff, and you kind of get it. I mean, right away, do you know who I am? I'm like, yeah, I think it's Two-Face. But when she says. Or I mean, the mom, when she says, since you're here, I must be the alter deal of me, like his
Which
mom.
Doesn't really make sense because it's not the altered version of his mom. It's his version of the altered version of his mom.
Is, again, that's where I think that if there is more, or there had more space, you might find out like that Harvey himself, his mom might have been worse than he let on, so that the alternate version is good, but it ends up by the end, it's just weird. But it is where Two-Face wants a trial, he wants to, but never really presents anything. It just kind of goes through because it's all like, oh, look, wow moments, but he wants to be the one in control. Harvey wins again. He wins again, and nobody's going to, and again, it's the idea that nobody's ever going to let Two-Face win. And if I was doing this, I would take the more of the route of Two-Face saying, listen, Harvey, you're where you are because of it. And he kind of does, but I'm the one who took all the abuse. Like, I'm the one who took all that for you. And this is what you do to me. Like, you're treating me like crap. But in the meantime, it's just the mom at the end saying, I'm going to let you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it almost feels like I'm going to let you out again, because he was already out, but now he's trapped again. And it's just like, okay, we'll see. But it really, this issue really signaled to me that there wasn't a lot going on in the series. And it's, you can't do an about face and do something like this, in my mind, in a 6-issue deal. Yes, there's an origin, but the origin is also like changing some other thing. It just seems like
it's like close enough to the original, but like just slightly different for a reason that I don't quite understand. I guess just to make it his own. I don't know.
Sympathetic and to make it his own deal, but it was odd. But we'll end up. The art's okay.
Yeah, the art's
colorful and stuff. What would you give it?
I'd just give it a straight 5.
Yeah, I'm giving it a straight 5 as well. Again, if you're reading it and like it up till now. I don't know, though, because it just kind of stops everything to do the basic bitch deal, and it just feels odd.
I almost never read things in trade. I always read my stuff month to month, but I'm sure this would read better in a trade instead of, I mean, this makes you wait, like 2 months between issue 3 and 5. I mean, that is such a momentum killer.
It is funny. Later on, I will mention the idea that I don't read things in trade, that I read them month to month. I will say exactly the same thing when me and Gray talk about the Batman Full Moon. But I ended up, and I usually, you'll never hear me say it reads better in trade because I rarely know, but I did end up reading that in a quick fashion. But yeah, I'm a 5 with this. It's what it is. And I said to a bunch of people too, eventually, like these sort of books, I think that I would have dropped it by now. But since we got this far, me and Eric were talking about it, we'll finish it. But I'm looking forward to some of these things ending because I'm not really loving it.
A lot of this stuff has kind of been souring me on DC's miniseries. Like if it's a 6-issue thing, I'm kind of like, well, it's probably not that good then.
Now, and this is the problem, and just you brought that up. I was thinking when I was reading these again, the idea where, and I at one point I did start yelling at Eric, maybe one of the reasons he left, but the idea of what are these for? Who are these getting? What is happening where somebody is somebody out there where their first issue is the Atom Project? And is this going to get, and I'm like, I don't know why you're doing this and not doing something more exciting. Even if it was the Atom, do something, because this book, because we're going to move on to the Atom Project, it is a slog to get through, and it just is. It's
and
not
every issue
great.
has been.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Like you said, you were going to drop it. And I hate to be a downer, because some of the books this week are okay. Just like the Atom Project #3, written by Ryan Parrott, is actually listed first now. I thought maybe they're flipping, and John Ridley, Mike Perkins on art and cover, Adriana Lucas on colors, and Wes Abbott on letters. And you end up having Michael Levine, or Matthew Levine, and Paul Kaminsky as editors. And
Paul
again,
Kaminsky.
man, this ends up where even I'm not a huge fan of Mike Perkins' art, but sometimes it works out. This is the sort of book that it works with, but it doesn't really.
It's funny. The first podcast that we ever did together was Batman the Caped Crusader with Mike Perkins on art. And I actually really liked the art in that, and this does not fit at all.
I'm not a real big fan of when he adds. This is almost like the art that looks like it would be like Event Leviathan stuff and things like that. It bores me. It's not. It doesn't. I guess Adriana Lucas is also at fault, because the colors are very muted. It ends up kind of having like almost like a weird, like, I don't know, like not tracing, but something that's supposed to look like it's like more realistic, but it just bores me.
Well, I just think he works with like a very stylized writer, and this isn't. I mean, like,
there's not much going on.
I'm not entirely sure if I can really nail down the plot for you right now.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying.
But I just don't think he fits with this sort of plot structure, Justice League kind of things.
With this plot, the Ryan Parrott and John Ridley, whoever's doing most of the heavy lifting, whatever, it's got a real bad pacing issue. It is a slog to get through. It's slow. You end up where in this, again, this is issue 3, so I can't say that this should be the first issue you would jump into, but if you did, there's things going on, but it's not exciting. There's a lot of, I mean, even when you get into the beginning, you have the atoms just talking to each other, and it's just jargon that doesn't really make sense. And the whole play of this is, why aren't we just dealing with solving the problem that you had at the end of Absolute Power, where the power's set and get this power and get that, and these people have it? It ends up where it just is like the most interesting parts of that. Now, if you like Captain Atom, you might be into it, but we're really centering on the idea of fixing Captain Atom when not many people care. I hate to say it. You have to make them care about Captain Atom in this first. You know, the idea that when we see Captain Atom anytime, like when this book ends, nobody's going to think to themselves, oh, I can't wait till next week when Captain Atom's in 7 books. We rarely see him. And when we did recently, it's Tom King getting him to get the shit kicked out of him by, you know, anybody he's writing, including Gotham Girl at one point. But in that, I want something that is just fun, and the idea of all these other people getting powers and what's happening. And instead, we're just dealing with this idea that Captain Atom doesn't want to be powered up. He wants to get rid of his powers, but instead, he actually can absorb a lot of powers. Yeah, and then kind of plays in, and it's a mess.
You know, we start getting into some things that I feel like are just really telltale signs of not great writing, and that's just over complicating things.
Yeah, it's so,
for
that's
no
what I'm
reason.
Saying.
Like, these writers need to learn how to keep things simple, because we get the last 2 issues have all been about, you know, Captain Atom absorbing or being unable to absorb his metagene powers. And then this one's like, oh, it's not because he was having a problem absorbing them. We needed to take away all. I can't even quite explain what they're trying to tell you.
They realized at the point, because of that bear deal, and that threw things in, like, animals, okay. But he gets that, so then they realize, oh, we're looking at it the wrong way. But then they also see, because at one point they're doing the experiments and everything's going wacky, and all the people the Watchtower is about to blow up, and this Watchtower is a bad idea. Every book that it's in is about to blow up. So all these people who did get these new powers and their metagenes were activated, they end up freaking out. Everything's going. You even have, some of the other Atom Smasher. He's about to blow. Everybody's yelling. And luckily.
And I still don't understand what's going on with Atom Smasher. Because what book was it in? I think it was in Justice League Unlimited, one of the issues where like he got fixed. And then they brought him back up to the Watchtower in this one, and he's back to being, for some reason, abnormally malformed.
He's looks like he's like Potato Head or something. He's about to go, and the art doesn't do any good there either.
No.
It's very confusing. But again, in this, like you said, keep it simple. The idea that Captain Atom is upset because this is his out. He wants to not have powers or die. He's just sick of being Captain Atom. So he goes back to the OG deal, and he wants this lady to do the experiment and, do it. Ray and Ryan come in and say, oh, my God, you're going to kill him. Yeah, that's what he kind of wants. But they end up stopping, and that's where you get that idea of them overstepping the bounds, where even Eric was talking about the idea that Ray seems off. But I do think he's just scientific, and he almost plays off the idea that he has no empathy. He just is. He has a job to do these powers. Captain Atom, he's got to fix them. But Captain Atom doesn't want to be fixed, but you get 80 steps to get to that.
Well, that's the confusing thing, too, is that last issue, Captain Atom literally said when he got his powers back that he was just so happy to be back to normal. And then now, and he's giddy with whatever, but now he absorbs everyone's powers, to save the Watchtower. And now he's suicidal? Like, I don't, and this plot structure of doing back and forth flashbacks, it is so unneeded.
It is unneeded because you even have, past Captain Atom. Just now, again, maybe the play is like you said, like at one point he was very excited to have the powers and now he isn't, but you just keep going to the past to do nothing really.
Well, it's pretty much caught up at this point, right? Because, him leaving the Watchtower with all these, superpowers was kind of the start of issue 1 with him on the train running. So, yeah, I don't know.
Again, when they're like, hey, and even the weird deal where Ryan's like, hey, where's Kevin? Oh, he's enjoying the outside. And you see him flying around space. Then at one point, Ryan even says, hey, this is awesome. You did it. No, Ryan, we did it. I'm like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Just come on. And like you said, everything has 5 other steps to make it not interesting, to make you not confused, because it's not that crazy a deal. It just ends up being more of a slog of like, come on now. And then by the end, where you do have the military, because this is the thing, what I think they're doing here is you are getting, again, a basic bitch Captain Atom story, because you're always going back to the same
Wade
deal.
Island.
Always. Yeah, exactly. So to do that, though, they're trying to smoke and mirrors that it's different because of the idea of these powers, whatever. But at the end, it ends up being that anyway. And the idea that they try to convince Captain Atom and say, listen, if you get rid of, they say, if you get rid of your powers, then somebody's going to come in later in Amanda Waller Part 2 and replicate your powers. And we're going to need you to be around to go against those powers. I'm like, what are you saying? That doesn't even make sense. It's ridiculous to say, and really, again, making it so that you don't care about Captain Atom. Actually, you do not care about him. So by the end, that's the major play, and that feels more John Ridley in my mind, of the idea of where do you get this guy who's like could be the best weapon that anybody would ever want, wants to get out, and they won't let him. Even the friends of his won't let him because that's all they see him as. And now the military's in, and it just ends up being it ends up being a mess. When I thought this was going to be the idea of, okay, let's go around and get these powers. Every book that was set up by these powers ends up like forgetting that's what it is and getting on wacky deals like that. And it's easy to say that was a real forced and nonsense way to get books that don't really care.
I can't blame the writers on that because it has to be editorial. But what just creating a problem for no reason that then you have to solve in some of these books, and it's like no one cares anymore. Absolute power right? absolute power is behind us. Like, we are all in now. We should be focusing on moving forward, and yet we're still dealing with these fucking messed up powers that some writers don't address at all. So I don't know.
Instead of all in, we're still there. You know what I mean? We're all there. Because, again, my big thing was absolute power. It was the last second deal. I mean, I'm telling you, like the last 3 pages, last 3 panels. Oh, no, the things. It was such a forced way. But if you were going to do this, the neat play would be to see, oh, who's got different powers? What are they doing? How do you do? And this just ends up because of the Captain Atom deal. I get it, but it just isn't it's not fun. I mean, I was going to say it's not very fun. It's not fun at all. And everything doesn't have to be fun, but
but this is a Justice League adjacent book, and somehow none of our characters are heroic.
They're just kind of standing around, right?
There's barely any action, and at the end of issue 3, we finally get an antagonist for them to fight.
That's the best thing. Is like, at the end, it suddenly becomes a comic book.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't like Major Force, right? But you have somebody now. Now the big play is Captain Atom, he wants to get the powers out. He wants to get rid. Major Force is showing up to kick his ass. He's going to have to do something about it. And that's cool. And we'll see things going on. And it seems like, okay, now we'll get a little more comic booky thing going. But it took a while to get there. And even then, it's just everything just is, well, we'll do this. And are we stepping over? It just doesn't feel like it's anything that I would like to be invested in.
Let me ask you, because I read the whole Captain Atom series from the 80s and early 90s, and that had General Eiling in it, and General Eiling had been the mastermind behind Captain Atom disappearing. He marries his wife and then adopts his 2 children. What is is there, does Captain Atom have kids in this continuity?
I can't remember the New 52 book. We ended up doing it for our one podcast. I can't remember. I can't remember how it was.
Because there doesn't seem to be that much animosity. I mean, obviously Eiling, wants to Captain Atom dead, but it doesn't necessarily seem for personal reasons. It's hard to tell. So I don't really know where we stand with these 2.
We'd have to see. And again, usually it ends up, he wants to get his power, he wants to do this. You got Major Force there and they're going to fight, but we'll see. But it just, again, it's one of those books that it's not very interesting. It is a slog to get through. We're doing it because we were doing it, but this might be, you were going to drop it. This probably, we should just.
Oh, but we finally get Major Force.
Yeah, that is true. I want to see a fight now and see what happens, but I have a feeling. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the next issue is.
I don't know. I'm not exactly clamoring to
but
to do this
what would you give it?
I would give this a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 3.5. The art's okay at points, but then other points, it's just,
parts of it I do like.
It bores me. The Major Force, that's the worst. Major Force is like, oh yeah, now we're going, it's the cliffhanger, because he looks pretty cool, but the other just doesn't, it's just boring to me, but that's the overall deal. Some of these books are weird, and they just end up like that, and I hate to keep repeating myself with that, but in the meantime, I even was getting a song together for the beginning of this section before me and you got on, and it pretty much is, without us even talking about these, but it is about books doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it fits. It ends up where some of these aren't really doing anybody any favors, I think, for the overall all in and trying to get people excited. Yeah,
well, that's what sucks is I'm actually pretty positive with where DC is now.
I like some of the books, but
you wouldn't know
these minis, though.
But.
These minis are, you said it, though. These minis, they're getting niche things, but they're not. Again, I get in fights with people about Metamorpho. At least that's trying to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous, but I see what they're trying to do. Al Ewing's trying to do. I don't know what they're doing with this book.
I don't know if it's writers trying to break through or make a little name for themselves, so they're trying to push the limit and they're just not pulling it off. I don't know. I don't know exactly. I don't know. I'm not a writer, so I don't know how the
John Ridley is starting to become one of those guys. Some people laugh become, but his Black Panther was not good.
What else has he done at DC?
He did I Am Batman with Jace, which I liked at one point, but that went nowhere. He ended up, one of the big things that I used to bring up with Eric, he did end up doing that I think it was in the Red, White, and Blue, the Superman book, where that anthology where he was in prison. Yeah, he did that. So he's a political guy, and he wants to do that, but I just don't think he's a very engaging writer. I don't think he's a very interesting writer. That Black Panther he did was boring as shit, and it is kind of like this. So, but Ryan Parrott, he ends up doing, a bunch of other things, indie stuff that's pretty cool. So with that, I don't know why that this isn't more fun, or at least something I can read and not get bored. But yeah, I'm not into it. But we'll see. We'll see what old Major Force does for next issue. But we'll get out of here. And you're not feeling good, so we'll get out as well. But with all that, thanks for joining me. And again, me and Tom do an Elseworlds podcast on our Patreon. So if you want to check that out, it's patreon.com/weirdscience. Now, because of this Captain Atom, and I kind of haven't been enjoying the deal, for this week's retro book, I did pick a Captain Atom story. So we're going to go off now for me and Stork to go through Extreme Justice number 0. That has a lot going on. And it's a lot of over-the-top fun and stuff like that. So maybe that's just more for me. Maybe some people with different sensibilities would like this a little more, but I don't think anybody's reading this Atom project.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't think so. But thanks for joining me, Tom. And we'll go off to me and Stork right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the first segment of our retro comic book review part of the podcast. I'm here with my man, Stork. What up, Stork?
What up, Jim?
You see, everybody was waiting with bated breath to see who was going to be involved in the
That's
retro show. It is you. And I figured that since we're starting this up, a new play, new phase of the podcast, why not start with something that everybody knows and loves, like Extreme Justice number 0? I actually thought afterwards I was going to get a hold of you and we do have some other books that we could do something a little more known, but
extreme.
No. Well, you're not going to get more extreme.
No, this is the most extreme.
This is Extreme Justice. So really, seriously. So with that, we will have a theme song eventually, since everything needs a theme song. And maybe it'll have retro. Let's go. I think that it might have that. Maybe in Japanese. I'm not sure.
Jenny?
But
Rosé?
Maybe Rosé.
Jisoo's my fave.
Jisoo has a new song out that's sweeping the nation. It is called Earthquake, though it's not sweeping the nation. It's not. Maybe South Korea. Yeah, South Korea. Not anything like Rosé and the APT. See, now finally, I am finally able to, on the regular podcast with somebody that appreciates the finer nuances of Blackpink New Jeans. Well, I make you. And even then, when Eric would start I always went, I sent it to Stork and he liked it. I don't know if you did. You're going to tell me, but
I won't shut down. I'll play along.
You did end up, though, having to tell people that indeed I was, not on the cutting edge because Blackpink was already popular.
You were calling her Rosie before anybody knew she was Rosé.
And then remember when I came back weeks later, I had to apologize because I was calling her the wrong name. That was way back.
Yes.
It was not a goof. I was really
You're
into it.
You're a fan from before there were fans.
Yes. Not really, but yes. Kind of. There were big fans of Blackpink.
There were American fans.
But I kind of jumped in.
Cutting edge.
Before there were old men.
Yes. Sus fans.
Exactly. Sus indeed. But here we are for Extreme Justice number 0. And this is, it's extreme.
Yes.
The reason
very 90s.
I picked it, obviously, is because the Atom Project was out this week. Whether or not it'll be on the show, I'm not sure, because this is, in fact, the first thing we're recording, and I'm having problems finding anybody who's actually reading the Atom Project, something that I was worried about, maybe the way that I gauge, what to talk about going forward, and the idea that if I can't find anybody from the amount of people that we talked to and whatnot, it wasn't even reading it. Maybe it wasn't the greatest thing to talk about anyway, but I'm still going to try to cover most of the books that we were covering. But in that whole play of, and I might have to do the Atom Project on my own, I'm going to have to get drunk. But in that, I kept saying about a book like that, why isn't it showing us, cool things? Why isn't it giving us, extreme fights and things? Yeah. So I looked up really came down to not even best stories with Captain Atom. It's just
only stories with Captain Atom.
Stories with Captain Atom. And I did my due diligence of about maybe 3 minutes, but I ended up looking up a bunch of things, and this kept coming up.
Tom King, out.
You don't need him getting beat up by Gotham Girl, and then later, I believe he's having the same problems in that Jenny Sparks I hear. But in that, this extreme justice kept popping up. It kept popping up, and indeed, one thing that did kind of show me the play of what John Ridley's doing in the Atom Project is, and Ryan Parrott, the idea where he does have a connection. Almost everything that he seems to be in. You do have Blue Beetle. Ted Kord is in a lot of the things. They seem to, not that in this, even this Zero issue, doesn't seem like they're best of buddies or anything like that, but they do seem to end up on teams together.
That's cool.
And in this whole play, we'll give you a little background of this team and this whole play. It's Extreme Justice. It came out, it was a Justice League spinoff title, and it replaced the canceled JLI, the Justice League International, formerly Justice League Europe, all that ran for 19 issues. This had 19 issues from 94 to 96. So it was U19 pretty much, if we're going manga deal.
Was loved.
But in that, it actually shocks me. Now, nowadays, things don't even last that long. So when you hear 19, you're almost actually impressed a bit, but not in those days. It wasn't very impressive, but it was coming out from January 1995 to July 1996. And it is 19 issues, 18 plus the issue 0 that we're going to end up doing. And basically, the synopsis of the entire thing is several heroes split from the main Justice League over dissatisfaction with the League's association with the United Nations. So these are the guys who are like, screw that. Like, it is a crazy political type deal. And these characters form their own Justice League based in Mount Thunder, Colorado, which we will get to in this.
Yes.
I guess they cleared out a bit. The team is led by Captain Atom and consists of Maxima, Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, Booster Gold, and Amazing Man, Will Everett III. And later on are joined by Firestorm, Plastique, and the Wonder Twins. So I get the idea. Wonder Twins, definitely when you jump the shark, right? Like I'm guessing that's going to be like the stretch run of it when it does happen. And
form of bucket of water.
Exactly. Form of canceled book. Carol Ferris ends up becoming the administrator of the Mount Thunder facility as well. So you have these things, and they do seem to butt heads with Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter during this series.
Yeah, they mentioned Wonder Woman, and not very nicely in this one.
Again, one of the things I do like about this, and really, I ended up just picking this, sent it to you, never read it ahead of time, and was really worried because this is the first issue we're doing. Ooh, if this is a stinker, like why we're the basis of this is to try to do something better. I actually like this.
Bad.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's not
I was
great,
worried at first,
but it's very 90s, so you got to know that going into it and kind of appreciate that style. Which the stuff we've done in the past together, I have come to appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And when you mentioned it, it kind of clicked in my head when they mentioned Wonder Woman, and not in a really great vein. It actually is almost refreshing that there's characters that don't really like each other.
Yeah.
And this team, though, in this Zero issue, you're not going to get it's the JLI when you end up where Guy Gardner's there and he's going to get punched by Batman. They seem to at least know they're a team. It's not one of those Zero issues where they have this deal. The team is set. Maybe that's the point where you even said to me before we recorded, where you don't know a lot of the characters. This is really going off of the canceled JLI book. So when you do get, say, an Amazing Man, I don't know much about Amazing Man. It's a character that really has not come up a lot in the last 10 or so years. And this is Will Everett. There's actually a couple different Amazing Men. So there's Will Everett, and then this is Will Everett III, actually.
Even Maxima is not a character familiar to me. I know the other ones here and there, but my one gripe would be that I wish we got a little bit in this introductory issue about some of the characters a little bit more, but I still had fun with it.
Yeah, I did too. And Will Everett, and I even said, this is Will Everett III. So the deal is he is the original Amazing Man's grandson. And the original, his granddad, actually plays off a lot like a Mr. Terrific, ends up being an Olympian. He was in the 36 Summer Olympics in Berlin. He ended up where he was a janitor, and I'm sure it played out the deal. This guy's an Olympian and ends up being a janitor, but then ends up using the lab. The lab explodes. It's a classic deal from back in the day of how these characters would have come about. And that was in like the 40s.
Yeah.
So you end up having it. So this is one of those characters that when you do get Will Everett III come in, he's a legacy character. He's the grandson, and it's the 90s, so he's extreme. And basically his powers are anything he touches, he can kind of turn into, kind of go with that. So he can remain unharmed. It happens a bit in this, but it's very quick. And then you have Maxima, and Maxima's a little bit, a little more recent deal, ends up first appearances in 89 by Roger Stern and George Perez. And she is an alien that's come to Earth to try to find some mates. And I don't mean
she kind of
friends.
struck me as a Starfire type.
Yeah, that's what it plays off. And so when you go in it, it's kind of a cool play that as you go, you kind of get that idea of like, okay, that's kind of like Starfire. And we're talking Starfire New 52 fully, where she's like, I have to make out with you to understand your language. And things. Like she seems very sexed up and wants to find a mate. So a lot of the things, and there's only one little line, and she's royalty too. So this would to continue the royal line that she's trying to do. There's one line, and I said maybe we'll see it, but we might not because of going through it. But she does end up like sizing up people, like, oh, you would be a good mate. She says one thing at the one point, but it's not really that crazy. And then you get Booster, Captain Atom, and Blue Beetle, Ted Cord. And Booster,
and I know these guys. Yeah, if
and
you're
Booster
a DC
has a crazy,
fan.
like, it is an extreme. It's the extreme Booster Gold outfit too.
Yeah,
it's
he's
crazy.
huge and flying around and stuff like that. I'm not used to this Booster per se, but I know Booster Gold. Yeah,
and at one point he wants to go to Vegas. It's Booster,
yeah,
and then Captain
Reno.
Atom.
So it's like it's fun.
And Captain Atom, the only thing different is he's got crazy hair, and it made me giggle. The hair plays on weird,
he's like
right?
Ric Flair or something.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when you see it, Ric Flair meets Dracula's. I'm telling you, he's like the Dracula's at one point. But again, going into this blind, I think it does enough where you're actually reading it, and you can have some fun with it and end up where you kind of get the gist. You may not know exactly who Amazing Man is,
even
but
at
you
the
get
end,
the
I'm
gist.
kind of like, I could want to read the next issue.
Yeah, and we'll just jump into it. And I didn't even say who the creative team is. I should do that. It is written by Dan Votto, pencils by Mark Campos, inks by Ken Brannon, Brannon. Letters by Kevin Cunningham, and colors by Lee Lowridge. Again, I say this on some of the things we do. I always laugh when you get the credits and they put the colorist after
Lee
the
Lowridge
letter.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's done some things. So, we have this, but
That's
I don't know much about Dan Votto or Mark Campos. It's very 90s.
Campos, yeah, it is very 90s though. A lot of action.
Yeah, a lot of action, a lot of people yelling. Yes. Shaking their fists and gritting their teeth, right?
Big, muscular heroes and things like that. So, I mean, if you love the 90s, you're going to like this.
Yeah, I thought it was, and again, going back and reading it now, it's kind of, you get a little kick out of that, just being what it is. But yeah, you end up where you start, and you start with not even knowing the characters or knowing these things, but there's some rogue colonel. The rogue army colonel West.
It's Dr. Strangelove. It's the crazy guy that wants to nuke Russia to start a nuclear war, but preemptively, because he's going to force the president's hand to fire all the nukes at Russia.
Yeah, all of them. He says, I'm going to fire this nuke. The president says no. He thinks that the Cold War's over.
It's 95. So, yeah, it kind of is.
But he claims it's only at halftime. I think what he's doing, it's 2-minute warning, because when he shoots these, it's happening and everything's done. But he ends up where he's going to shoot this missile. And, yeah, they're, hey, get me the president. No, I can't get the president. This whole play going on. But then they see that there's something approaching, and it ends up being our team. And you end up having a full-page spread. Looks pretty cool. You have them all zipping in. You do see even Blue Beetle and Mr. Amazing. They end up having these like rocket boot type things. It looks pure 90. I mean, it's 90s.
I saw the cover and I thought, was this Liefeld? It does really
Captain Atom has
art.
Kind of a foot, but still a little shady. And I will tell you that the feet there too, though, on the rocket boots, they're kind of like pushed in. He's having some problems with the feet as well, right?
It could
they're
be
not
rough.
Great. Now, if you did have Captain Atom, if his foot was a little like pointier, that'd be right in. But it does look like that. And there's a lot going on, the backgrounds and stuff. And it's like everything's extreme in your face is what it is, to the detriment at some point of maybe seeing exactly what's happening.
It's like boy, this is a bit much.
But they come in to this base where this Colonel West, and they just start lighting it up. I mean, they are just shooting rockets. They're blasting. Captain Adams doing his blast. You end up having Ted going to town. And you do get that, whole play of this. And what I do like in this is the two characters that we don't know, Mr. Amazing and Maxima, they kind of are together talking with each other. That gives you some of the information a little better than maybe if they were just on the side or whatever. But it's just, she then says that, because they're getting attacked by robots and crazy things. And she's like, these wouldn't even be sanitation droids on Almerac. And you get, okay. I mean, even if you didn't know anything, you're like, she's from Almerac. She's an alien. Almerac, okay. And then you end up having Will say, well, remind me never to go to Almerac again. And it says, then besides, it's the guy in the bunker we really need to worry about. And so they're going in and they think that they're going to be able to stop this because the nukes you're going to have two keys, that classic deal, right? But the guy says, I've already thought ahead for that. And he's all into the idea where he's like, okay, let's get rid of these two. It makes sense, though, to not want to have to turn two keys. But they do then go to stop the guy. But one of the missiles launched. They end up missing the missile launch. This guy's able to launch it. And so they don't know what to do. And you realize what's going to happen. Captain Adams just going to go and try to take this thing down. And again, the progression is really cool. And it almost feels like, if you would sit there and think, kind of feels like a G.I. Joe comic at this point also. It's like very much like, oh no, the bad military guys, like they could even be Cobra and you have to go and get this deal.
Right.
But it's cool.
It's kind of like a cold open to a action movie. So it does play out well.
Yeah, and he ends up and again, you have this Colonel West thinks that the way he wants Russia to be wiped off the face of the earth. So he says, and he calls him Shiny Boy. And they kind of, you'll get the idea. And we always
Freedom is really going to ring.
There he is. Freedom's going to ring.
There's some great lines in this. That's one of them.
They're getting him and kind of grabbing him, but you have to stop this missile. And Captain Adam does, and it looks really cool. Like when he's going and he's even going through, the exhaust deal of the missile up to the missile itself to try to grab it, and he's going to detonate it in space. He kind of figure that's what he's going to do.
I was thinking like, I forgot how fast these are. So it does give you a background. Like he knows what he's doing, and man, he's so powerful. So they give you that. We're
talking about a writer that maybe some people, but I've never heard, Dan Vado. I'm not going to tell you that I heard he's great, but I've never heard of him. Yet when he goes through this, he seems to know how to pace this issue, even if it is like balls to the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you pull off and you have what looks like going to be the main villain, or at least from the shadows watching this, and ends up looking like some bored or something like that to give you a little thrill, but ends up like, oh, look at you, Captain Adam. You think that you could do this, but you're going to end up this whole play of him watching this and talking from the shadows, saying that he's going to bring him down. I thought was pretty cool. Like the idea, like,
good
okay,
colors
like,
too.
yeah.
Just like he's in the darkness, but everything he's watching is green, so it's pretty cool.
And even like walks through the hologram at one point to almost show you and kind of put him in the face of Captain Adam. It was pretty neat.
You want to know who this guy is?
Yeah, again, that's the cool way of setting things up and going really quick. It's one page, but seeing this, thinking, okay, it is a cold open. They stop the missile, and it's Captain Adam who goes and takes him, and they think that he might be dead. They're like, oh my God, is he dead? And he just comes down. He's like, no fuss, no muss. I'm Captain Adam. Yeah, basically,
Fools.
That's what he does. Comes down and says, hey, I'm here. In that point, there are people who are yelling, like, who are you? These other, military guys who come in. And he's like, oh, we're the Justice League. It's what Blue Beetle says. And then when they zip off, they're like, Justice League? Like, we're not the Justice League. That's, force of habit. It gives you some of that background. That's kind of cool. And then even saying that where to now, fearless leader, and they go off. But in the meantime, you see this other guy who's watching this that seems to be a bigger villain than just this wackadoo who just decides he's going to start World War III because he wants freedom to ring. But you end up where they go, and they right away, again, there's not a lot of wasted time.
No,
there actually could have been some that we might have been able to learn a little more. But as a zero issue, it's really getting you into, okay, we're setting this, and this up, but it doesn't feel forced in my mind because they need to go somewhere. They need a base. A lot of times what you have here is, oh, well, we'll go to Happy Harbor. Nobody's been there in a while. Like, this is very common to have where we'll go somewhere where you can't imagine how great the space is, but there's a reason. And hey, I haven't been there. And that's kind of the play where Captain Atom takes him off.
It's cool because it's somewhere he's been before, so he knows this would be a good place for them to be.
Yeah, and they go, and it's abandoned silver mine. And they're like, why would be? And here's where Maxima starts talking, too. It's like, if I thought that I'd be in a hole in the ground, I am royalty, and I'm, this or that. She's all upset and like, pipe down there, Maxima. We're going to go in and see. And then even Captain Adams says, everybody cool it. Like, we're going to go down here. It's more than just
this is where
mine.
Booster 2 is like, are we near Vegas? This is Nevada. So you get these, and then even Ted is like cool at Booster. So you get a nice little play between the characters here, and you get the Booster is like kind of he might be a degenerate of some sort.
Because it's the 90s, Booster has that crazy armored helmet deal, right? Maxima's freaking out in the background, and Ted is screaming at the top of his lungs, and all they're doing is saying, are we near Vegas? That's it. This isn't like the worst thing, but everybody has completely lost their minds because of this thing. But it's cool. Again, these are the sort of things, because I wasn't reading comics back in the 90s. I haven't read comics all of my life, right?
I haven't either, yeah.
Hearing the extreme 90s has just been, we've read things from it, but it's cool when you do jump back and see, like, the real extreme, because this is very extreme. It's extreme justice, so it makes sense.
It is. They even say that title.
Yeah, so you go in, and speaking of which, the team never calls itself Extreme Justice throughout. I did see that as a little note. I believe maybe Wonder Woman might call him that at one point, or Marshall. Another character will call him that, but I'm sure it's throwing shade at them. They go down in this mine, and again, you realize, and the cool thing is, it's a facility. They're like, oh my God, what is this? And Captain Atom starts to explain that, this was an off the books, off budget facility that he ended up being a part of. That was pretty cool. It has, what they needed. Seems very big for that small team.
This isn't a weird thing, though, because the town I'm from, like close to it, there are mines that they store government stuff in because it's cool in there, and it's.
You mean like it's cool, like you go down in there and find?
No, temperature-wise.
I thought maybe it was because it was like, man, it's really cool in this joint. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's protected because it's underground. So, yeah, they store government records and things in there. And this is just something that I believe does happen around the country.
Seriously, there are many of the theories of the catacombs and things in the Midwest of having facilities that are as big as cities and things like that. And that's what this is. And this is back in 94. So it wasn't like the idea. It's a cool idea, but it does work. We were actually, just as an aside, we were talking about the Grant Morrison stuff that me and Gray do. And we were talking about how he seems to have this knack of coming up with things that end up becoming things later. Yeah, he is one of those guys. He is scared of ghosts. And you end up where all that's going on. Like this it's plausible, and it's a comic book universe, so it's fun. But then they get attacked by robots. And this is supposed to be Captain Atom says there's nobody in here except bats and some rodents. And then all of a sudden
you hear bats and you think, oh, is Batman in here? Is this his domain?
And if it is, he's now a Cylon, because that's what it reminded me of. It looked like Cylon, like weird combination of Cylons meet aliens. These things. Again, there's tons, and they're surrounded by them. And this is the play here, though. Again, you do have a little bit of them walking into the mine where they're talking. But I think that even them losing their mind at Booster, it gives it more energy than just people sitting at a table eating, hummus and and that it seems like that's what they do now. Like even this Captain Atom book, the Atom Project, there's a lot of just like sitting around, standing around, talking.
Yeah, it's like I look at a comic book and I want to like the Indiana Jones movies where it's like, okay, you get a little bit of a breather, but there's an action scene every 5 minutes. And then you get a breather, and then an action scene, and then a breather. And that's lacking nowadays. And that's what this comic does. It's like, okay, here's a little breather, but now we're going to get an action scene again. And it kind of makes sense, and it fits, and it's fun.
And you can go with all your ideas of, catchphrases and why things are bad now. But I do think that storytelling is lacking in a lot of these, but it's also the idea of knowing how to make a comic that keeps you interested. And this thing is balls to the wall because then they get attacked by robots, and not the idea of like, oh, that seemed forced. You're in a government facility they think is empty and it's not. That leads you then to be like, well, why isn't it? And all this. And
also, these are way advanced. So why is that?
Yeah. And what's the deal? You turn the page here. Holy moly. I mean, the idea that before was extreme, like I always read when we do these, podcasts, I read a double page. I always have double page because I like that. Oh, yeah, that, in my mind, I'm looking ahead and going over things. What that you turn this and have this spread. It is just, I mean, it's explosions everywhere. Yeah. People are in targets, yelling, screaming. You have Booster who's flying dead at the one point, and everybody's just going nuts. You end up where you see Will, Amazing Man, get shot, but he says, thanks for the warning, because Blue Beetle says, hey, you're behind you. And he looks and he says, it gave me enough time to absorb the blast. So if he can see, he can concentrate and he can absorb these things.
And these pages, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of panels but I didn't get confused about where I was supposed to be throughout the whole thing. Like maybe once or twice I was like, well, maybe I should. But it was really naturally progressed with the panel play.
And so much is going
on
that. But still going. And as you say that, a lot of the times you'll have like a overall panel and then you have these other things on it. So you have to read down the side, then go over. But I was never confused. I was confused, I think, one time.
Yeah. There was only one time. It still kind of fit. Like, it didn't matter that you read this
and
part first.
Crazy. Yeah. Everything's going on. You're seeing, and they're targeting Will. That's where you see that target where Blue Beetle says Will behind you and goes. Also, I do think, and if this is the case, his grandfather's identity was exposed. You ended up where I think it might have been J. Edgar Hoover, whoever it was, exposed. So them saying Will, they're using his real name. You usually don't get that, but I think it's because everybody knows that he has taken over, and so they yell his name like that. So that's the deal. Usually you'd think, like, why are they yelling out his real name? But that's the play. And ends up where, again, he ends up absorbing this. And also just to show you in this, you get, Blue Beetle's yelling to him, but then Booster's carrying Blue Beetle. Then you get Maxima. You get everybody involved. And then you get, Captain Atom was going, crazy with his powers out his eyes. And but you also see they work well together and know what's going on and have each other's backs and all these things. But really it is what is going on with this facility. Why are there people here? And they're not like really mad at Captain Atom, but they want to know like what's going on? Like, why is this? And you even have where Ted, he goes into the security deal because he says if these are robots, they have to be controlled by a central place. And he finds it. And then even says, why does this stuff look familiar? And then just goes on. But that sets the play. He's looking at the controls and everything. And something is reminding him of something. But that sets that mystery that keeps going on. That, what is this and why? And is this, maybe connected with the guy we saw before?
And we get more of that sexy, sexy hair.
Yeah, that
Captain
hair
Atom.
is crazy. It does. I mean, if people don't end up looking at this, it looks like Kurt Russell hair from, back in the day of, Kurt Russell.
He's escaping from New York.
Or it's, Big Trouble in Little China hair. That's what he looks like. And I wouldn't be shocked if they said that was the model of him because he looks like it, just silver. And as we all know, Kurt Russell's solid gold. So that would not be the deal, right? The deal. So when we're doing this, though, again, you end up where Ted says, what's going on? Why is this still maintained? Why are they keeping this place up? And Captain Adams doesn't know. He says, I'm going to find out. And that's kind of like the big play with them there. They're going to still obviously be trying to do that. But we do then go off and we end up seeing this retired general, who obviously is a piece of crap. We know it right away, even though he tries to play
because
it nice.
He looks like the Crypt Keeper.
yeah. He looks like the Crypt Keeper, yet this hot girl wants every bit of jumping his phone.
Yeah, this is kind of some odd dialogue that kind of threw me off, too.
He does mention it, too, in a little bit, because he's there at the White House. He has a meeting with the president. President French Fries, he says. Which is funny.
Made me laugh.
It did make me laugh too. And so people probably don't even get it. But you end up where all that going on, she's like, you got a call from your wife. She actually calls the White House to talk to him. And she says, "Oh, I didn't know that you had a wife. I thought you were available." I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what's going on here? And this guy's mad. The art a little bit, I didn't get, but he explains it. He goes off into a closet in the White House, right?
Weird. With a checkered board flooring.
It's so crazy, right?
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know exactly the deal here, but it's like his handler type deal. She's an old battleship here, battle axe. And he's like, "What are you doing saying you're my wife and all this? I was about to get nailed." I'm like, "Oh my goodness gracious." But they have the security breach. Hey, Mount Thunder, so he's connected. And he's like, "Relax, and we're going to get this Mount Thunder's best kept secret." He's going to take and says, "Send in the Air Force." And this lady, "Oh my God, but that would expose all our plans." So obviously the guy's doing bad things and it's well spelled out. And he's like, no. The way they did that explains it. I thought he was just going to say everybody who made it got killed. But he says everybody who made it, each person, like, you did your one little part, but you never knew what the whole was. So nobody knows. The Air Force is supposed to protect it. They don't know what they're protecting.
They take orders. That's the whole thing. They don't question anything. So we'll be fine.
And this guy has a connection with Captain Atom because they say Captain Atom is part of this. And he says, "Oh, that's a problem. We got to stop Captain Atom. This is going to be a problem." So it connects this guy with Captain Atom. He's retired. You know that in the past, Captain Atom stuff. So,
and we did get the thing about him being from the 60s. So that's a key moment.
And again, in the thing where, again, bringing up Eric, the idea that he loves organizations and teams and stuff like that, you are in this getting that, covert, whatever this organization is that will be revealed, whatnot, the idea that that's a pretty cool, like I said, almost like spy type thing to go in with Captain Atom, that you usually do get stuff like that. But this is done in a way that's pretty cool. And then we go off to a doctor with Bro-Man here. This ends up, this is so funny because I didn't realize at first, me and you were both dummies. It's Ronnie Raymond Firestorm.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, I didn't realize it.
You don't recognize him. And also the idea of Firestorm changes a lot over the time and the continuity, even especially New 52, but there's been different deals with him.
I mean, race-wise?
That, and if it's two guys, the Dr. Stein, like we don't know exactly what's going on here when they do say Ronnie. And he has cancer, he has leukemia, but it's way past the deal. You can describe how Ronnie looks in this by just giving me a bit of a dialogue.
He just looks like a dude, bro, and it's so weird. Like his hair is in his face, and it's just hair. Like, "Doc, give it to me straight, man."
That's what he's doing. He's like a bro. I'll tell you, you want to have people get upset? His hair reminds me a bit of the Absolute Flash hair that people who are actually Superman. Remember when the Absolute Superman was announced? And they're like, "Oh, he has that hair that kind of covers that side of his face. What is he, emo or whatever?"
I just wanted him to throw his head back to get his hair out of his face.
Oh my God, you know that he's doing that every 2 seconds.
Tell me what I can do.
But bro, like, give it to me straight, Doc. He's like, "I did. You have cancer. You're going to die."
Can I be cured? Man?
I like it at one point. He's like, "I looked at your test. You should have a seat." "I am sitting, bro." And he goes, "Oh man, is this going to be like..."
"I just have like a really high torso." That's why you thought I wasn't sitting.
The idea that he's there, this hair, the one picture of him, I'm like, this guy might be the bass player from Kashagugu. I'm telling you, it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But it's funny, and it becomes, this is the setup. I said earlier, Firestorm becomes a part of the team. So he's here for a reason, but he does have cancer. It doesn't look like it's too late. It can't be cured. And the idea of him, like the doctor says, just take a vacation while you feel better, whatever. Then said at one point, just, you don't want to give somebody false hope. It might cure itself. Like, I'm like, what are you doing, Doc? Like, seriously. Like, who knows?
The body does amazing things, but you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah, that's the best. I'd like that he's like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but it might cure itself. Like, you might get lucky.
You might, you've got 6 months to live, but who knows? Maybe you've got 20 years.
I like it, and then he does say,
"You're giving me mixed signals here, Doc."
Yeah, Doc, what are you doing? I'm like, "Bro, what is it?" What's the deal? He then also says, as a background of not knowing, he does say you could go through chemo and stuff like that. You can get radiation. And
radiation?
Radiation.
Man. That sounds totally lame.
he actually says, like, and that's kind of how I got in this situation there, Doc. I don't think this will be good. But he says, what would that do? And it might help you live a year later.
You're going to lose that hair, man. Oh,
yeah, really. That's
that.
Actually the case closed. Deal breaker, bro. Like, there's no way that he's going with it. No, this hair is glorious. This hair is crazy. Also, he's got the George Michael stubble. This guy is, I never knew Ronnie Raymond was so sexy. Oh, I just want my freedom, bro. Look at those blue eyes. Holy
I know, they're
moly.
staring into my soul. I must admit.
Also, just think that he has the stubble. He's got that hair. Also, he has his 5 buttons down. I mean, he knows what he's doing. Hey, I like the idea. It's like, Doug, I don't. Hey, how about now, Doc? And he's just unbuttoning
what if
shit.
I buckle this belt? Would that make my prognostication better, man?
Maybe we should get a second opinion, bro. It's like, whoa, what's going on? What are you on a prostate exam? Whatever you call it, bro. But yeah, this
Let
is
me consult
setup.
my optometrist. I call him One Eye.
People who don't think, you got to see them. It's so great. It's so great. But yeah, see, already having more fun than that Adam project. I'll tell you, this segment's a hit. I'm in. I don't even care if anybody likes it. I'm having fun. But you end up then going back to Mount Thunder, and they're trying to figure things out. Basically, they're still talking about, the tech here is way beyond. This is the crazy deal. Hey, they also ended up, scrambling the works before they bugged is what these. So this is going to be the setup of them getting attacked.
This is our safe house, for better or worse. We're staying here.
It's huge too, and they end up where they're going to search the rest of the level. Captain Atom again. This is the best. Captain Atom's hair is just the second funniest hair in all of this. It's crazy. But he says the rest of you start searching the rest of this funhouse. Maxima, why don't you take Booster and search the rest of this level? She looks pissed.
I'll go from here to Reno. It's like, I think Booster has a gambling problem or a hooker problem.
Yeah,
maybe.
Really, a hooker and gambling, maybe. He's gambling, especially then with the AIDS. You don't want to gamble with that.
It is still early 90s.
So he ends up there and they're like, hey, I got the exterior monitors working. Boom. Just so that they can see that there's, some trouble. It looks like we got company. I like that they call him Cap, too. And says, I think we might know these guys. And it's peacemakers, legit peacemakers.
Keepers.
Or peacekeepers, I'm sorry. The idea where I didn't realize, we would even get that. So it's pretty cool. The peacekeepers are there. And then it just says, next, no place like home. In the way that I thought it was somebody talking off panel at first. So I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah, it is kind of pointing, but it's just,
But you have a pretty cool first issue or zero issue to set things up. And boy, we had fun with that hair.
Oh, yeah, it was fun.
And if you really want to get into it and you end up getting one of the original issues, you can see exactly what inkers do next, because there's a big thing, as if the inkers are complaining that nobody knows. But you end up where kind of a cool play. It's a zero issue. It sets up a lot of action. If I was reading this back in the day, if I was going to continue, it would be for the action. And and what I like about that is I'm not that interested, I've said, about Captain Atom. I love, Blue and Gold. Don't know Maximum much, but really don't know, Will, Mr. Amazing. But the action keeps you going so that you can learn the other things.
Right. Really, if you're 13 years old in 1995 and you picked up this issue and you're just like, oh, this is balls to the wall. I want to see who this villain is, this shady villain. And you'd go along with it. I think so. I
mean, if you weren't at this point, in a band opening up for Foghat in Kansas, then you might get into that stuff like that. That's about the time. So
you didn't have too many gigs.
Yeah, if you didn't have too many gigs. And I said when I was in college, there was a comic shop. And I think back, I'm like, I think I did go in one time. I think I did talk about this. I went in because I hoped they had role-playing games in there. And they didn't at that point. Now probably would. But I went in and I just looked. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of this place.
Yeah,
but thinking
the
back,
Dirt Mall in my town had a comic shop, and I was afraid to go down it
because you were afraid you'd get made fun of and yelled at.
I was afraid I'd get kidnapped or something. It was down this shady, dark area of the mall, and it was like, I don't even want to go down there.
So obviously you didn't know how to spell
Rusty Nail bar.
Really? You got the Rusty Nail?
Yeah.
Zucchini. You're yelling it.
Yes. 2 C's.
This thing was on High Street, and High Street's my street, we used to say. But it ended up where, now that I think back at it, I'm like, it was really cool.
I know. I wish I would have went to mine too.
Yeah, I wish I would have went in, and I knew like I knew like two people who read comics, and I'm like, nerds. That was basically it. And again,
Mr. RPG.
I have a feeling though, and that was when these wackadoos wanted to do that vampire, the whatever, it was Masquerade. I didn't realize it was live action role playing. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, this is ridiculous. I'm like, I'm not walking around drinking clamato juice and, doing nonsense and leaving notes. It seemed to be leaving notes a lot. But the idea, though, it seemed like a pretty cool shop. I wish I would have went. But I know the way I am. I was, in school and in a band. I didn't have much time, and I would have thought that was wasting time that I should study. So
I had a friend that was into comics too at that time, and I thought it was just stupid, and I didn't even try. I wish I would have. Like, he was big into Batman and Punisher, and I wish I would have checked it out back then. But
I'm a little older.
We're here now.
I'm a little older, and when I was growing up, I had the one guy whose dad looked like Gene Simmons that would bring him the Marvel comics. That guy scared the shit out of me, but I never really tried.
Boys. Support Kiss.
He's playing God of
Kiss
Thunder.
Coffin.
He ended up where he's like, I'm like, isn't that the one with Kiss's blood? No, it's my blood. And it ended up where I looked at the covers, and it was all Marvel stuff. So at that point, too, it was like, Silver Surfer, and they were some cool covers, but I never read anything. But then when I moved to Quakertown and just went through, I don't think I ever met anybody except my friend Randy was in the Elf Quest. That was it. I didn't really think of that. That guy got beheaded, so you watch it. The idea of all this stuff, though, is that...
Because of Elf Quest?
No, but I might connect it. He also loved the Grateful Dead. But there you go. Also big Zeppelin fan. But the idea, he was huge in the Elf Quest. But nobody I knew was actually buying comics. Like, I never met anybody in my life until later of the idea, I collect Batman or I collect Spider-Man. Nothing. But again, I think that at my point, being a little older than you, people were running scared. It was not what you'd admit in like junior high and high school, unless you ended up, knowing them for a while. And I guess people that I was hanging with played sports and stuff like that. And so they might have beaten up. Yeah, maybe I should ask them who they're beating up lately. And then I would have gone. But it's a shame. I wish I would have gotten into it a lot earlier. But what would you give this?
I'm going to give it a 7.6. I did like it, but a little bit of unnatural exposition at the beginning, but and also it didn't give you the backgrounds of the characters though.
Because it was coming out of that series, I think that they just went with it, but we don't have that.
Right. So as a 0 issue, or even if it was a 1 issue, I would have felt a little bit lost. But still, I had a lot of fun with the 90s goofiness of it. So I think there's that to be had. And the art was pretty good. A little busy at times, but still, I think it's above average for sure.
Yeah, I'm going 7.5. So just slightly under you, but that's what it is. I'm not going to go, gaga about it, but I do think that I had more fun reading it and talking about it than a lot of stuff currently, which there's play. That's kind of a problem with comics, whatever. You have just this 90s comic that's balls to your wall action and over the top things, but yet it still reads better than a lot of the stuff that we end up talking about. So that is a shame. And I'm looking at next week's books. We have, say, like a Black Lightning. We have Green Lantern Corps. Like, we'll probably try to pick something. Aquaman's a good play, but we'll try to figure out what retro issue that we'll do. Eventually, maybe we'll even have a poll or whatever to set things up. But if anybody has any sort of, oh my goodness, working the poll, so if anybody has any sort of, very up, any ideas of what they might want us to do, I tend to like to get a little more obscure stuff though than just like the really things that everybody's read. This I think is like the setup.
Well, maybe like this, you could put a poll of like what do you want to tie into a current book, and then you could figure out. And then we'll figure it out from there. Like if somebody wants Black Lightning, seems like it'd be a good play. That or Aquaman, but we'll see. We'll see how we do this. But each week, I will start even announcing a little earlier because we'll figure it out, and then I'll announce on the Patreon. I'll announce, maybe Twitter, whatever, what we will be doing the following week or the week that we're doing that. So this is fun. I never heard of this before.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. So, and it's something, again, I want to mix things up and talk to a lot of people and do things a little different than what me and Eric did. not just the current books, because a lot of people are down on them. So we will keep doing as we're doing, as my grandfather begged me to do
keep doing
on
what
his
you're doing.
deathbed. So with that, we're going to go back to the rest of the podcast.
Mail, check out what you got now. Get your postcards, birthday cards, eBay or stock cards. I get it while it's hot now. If a letter makes you wetter, then a better, ready, better, it's mail.
And it is time for the mail. We actually got a mail this week, and I want to throw it out there. Please mail in. Let me know anything that you want to talk about. Comics, life, this crazy roller coaster we call life, at Weird Science DC Comics at gmail.com. And I do have a mail that's sitting back there. Zach's probably, shaking his head this whole time because he had a mail from way back from me and Eric. I think that that mail I may have Zach actually come on and do it with me. It was kind of a talk about what books were our favorites in the all-in. And every time I asked Eric if we were going to do it, he said there wasn't enough time, not books, this, that, whatever. But we will get to that. But here is Ruben this week. Ruben! And he says, "Hi, Jim. I'm glad you're planning to keep Weird Science going. I was not one of your original listeners." He was pretty quick. But it has been 8 years now. I mean, he came in 2 years into the whole deal. So he's pretty much an OG. The podcast and community have become a regular part of my life, and it will feel like a big loss if you ever stop, which, might happen someday. That's the thing. I used to joke all the time, like, oh, we're almost done. And Eric took me on my word, I guess. Years ago, when I first wrote in, I told you that I loved the podcast because it was a virtual comic bookstore. What I did not expect at the time was that I'd make friends in the Weird Science community. I like to call that the Get Fresh crew, just like I did when I used to frequent the now defunct The Dreaming Store in the University District of Seattle. The Dreaming Store. The hell kind of name is that? It sounds like you're going to go in and buy crystals and start talking about your freaking zodiac sign. The Dreaming Store. Ooh-wee. Seattle, they're known for a lot of things, not for naming their stores, I guess. I'm not alone in thinking that Weird Science and the Get Fresh crew are something special. So I hope you do keep the shows going for a long, 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 long time, he says. He says that. We'll see. As long as the ticker keeps on ticking. I am also looking forward to hearing more from the rest of the Get Fresh crew and expect that the podcast will only continue to get better. And then he says, keep it weird, Ruben. And yeah, we'll keep it weird. We will keep going. And yeah, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust to things or figure out what works and what not. And also a lot of the people that I'm talking to, I already do some podcasts with, but it's newer stuff, the DC stuff and all that, because me and Eric did it for so long. And what I'm looking forward to, and I even said to Tom this week, I believe, I'm looking forward to the points when, the people get used to talking to me. And I have this thing where I get it. I think that when they come on the show, they don't want to fight with me because, they don't want to look like jerks. But that'll be when the fun starts. When you start getting, some fights going and see how that goes down. And get all uncomfortable and stuff. So we'll see. But it'll happen. It'll happen. Everybody always ends up fighting with me, and then they leave me. That's what happens. They leave me. But thank you for writing in, Ruben. And we're going to keep on keeping on as we do. As my grandfather once said, just keep doing what you're doing. He didn't know what I was doing, but he wanted me to keep on doing it. That's what he wanted. So I'm doing it, Grandpa. I'm doing it for you. Ay, ay, ay. If there was truly ghosts, I think my dad and my grandfather would both be haunting me and probably just trying to beat me up, but their ghost arms would go right through me and I'd laugh at them. Though, if my dad, even as a ghost, the idea ghosts probably shouldn't weigh anything, my dad would still weigh 300 pounds as a ghost, and that's half his weight when he was a human. A human. When you're a ghost, you ain't no human anymore. You're a ghost is what you are. He wouldn't be able to fit in there. Ghost Dad would not fit. He'd be the one standing outside of that window looking in, probably yelling James, because when he was mad at me, he'd yell James, and that's when I knew to run. That's when I knew the belt was coming off, and there was some trouble. So with all that, hey, everybody, that is it for the mail. Thanks for emailing in, Ruben. And please, everybody, just if you want to just, shoot the crap, have some questions, or just let me know what you're enjoying. Maybe you're enjoying some things that I'm not. Maybe there's some books that we don't end up covering that you think are great and want us to cover. Because one thing I will say, that if people do make suggestions, I will change everything for one suggestion, because I go with the idea, if that one person suggests it, that means that 3 billion people actually want that change, and I'll do it. It used to drive Eric nuts. I will change things just for that. So yeah, let me know. Email it. It's weirdScienceDCComics@gmail.com. And we do read every email. So if you write in and say, boy, Jim, you were real all over the place, that one, I'll be like, yeah, I was. And then I'll probably get mad afterwards. But on the air, as we say in the biz, I'll act like it's funny. And then I'll stew on it. I'll stew on it later. I'm fighting with a couple people right now on Twitter and 1 or 2 on YouTube. I should have like a scorecard going, or even like a fight card. Have some, round girls, round 3. She'll come out in the bikini, right? See, this is what I'm talking about, a little flighty. But with that, that's it for the mail. And now I can get even more flighty, because I'm going to go off and I'm going to review a book all by myself. I'm going to do the Teen Titans Go, which is weird for the podcast, but I figured it's weird, science. So why not? We're going to keep it weird. I'm going to go off right now to do the review. And this is Teen Titans Go #1, a new #1. It's written by Sholly Fish, drawn by Dario Brizuela, colored by Franco Risco, lettered by Seda Tamafonte. Sholly Fish, I think, does a really, really good job. Me and Simon even mentioned them on the Spotlight this week on the Patreon, because that's one of the things that they do is the Batman Scooby-Doo mysteries, which Simon still will, really fight people to, really punch you right in the face if you say it wasn't good, because he really liked it at one point, one of his favorite books that was coming out. Now, in the meantime, old Sholly has, I guess it's Sholly. Weird name, right? Really, maybe this is why. What I was going to tell you is he ended up blocking me. I don't know why. I think I was the victim of a blockchain of some sort, because I don't know what I could have ever done to upset Sholly Fish, but I did it. But I'll still talk about and give an open mind for this Teen Titans Go #1. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be something that is, everybody's going to be grabbing. Again, I'm an adult. Most people listening to this are older, but I never mind reading stuff like this. Also a pretty good Nirvana album. But the idea of all this, I like having fun. I like all ages books. And this does what I think the best of them do. It ends up having, any kid could read this. If you have a kid, this is great. If they love Teen Titans Go, then they're going to love this. The art's great. The art looks exactly like the cartoon. I mean, exact. And having watched a bunch of episodes with my kids a while back, but still did, the voices that Sholly Fish, great. I mean, everything about this as a Teen Titans Go book is really, really good. What it also does, though, is has a little bit of that humor that only, longtime comic fans or, comic fans would get, that maybe a younger kid wouldn't get, but it's there to make the adult, especially if you're reading it with your kid, you'd get a couple chuckles from this. And I think that's something that I could go for, because there are not a lot of chuckles going around, not a lot of chuckles this week. But this is pretty good. And what happens is the Teen Titans, they end up getting called into the DC offices, or the DC castle in this instance. They end up going in to talk to the Mrs. DC, the President deal, thinking that they're going to be awarded. And there's a lot of things. And one of the things that you'll get right away, first off, the art, as I said, is really, really good and really looks, exact to the cartoon. But when you get the dialogue and you end up having Starfire with everything she talks about is the snappy dressing, the, villains, this, and everything has the and I'll give you more examples than those stupid ones I tried to pull off the top of my head. But she's doing that. They think they're going to be rewarded for something. even, and this is where I'm talking about, even right away from the first 2 pages or so, when they're going in the castle, Cyborg's all excited. He's like, maybe we want an Eisner or a Harvey or even a Ringo. And then you end up Raven just says, now you're just making up names. So that's funny. See, that's funny stuff. But they go in and find out that the book's been canceled. So their book has been canceled and they are not happy about it. So they're trying to figure out what they can do to get the book back. Now, there's some funny things even when they end up pretty much being told, canceled, get out of here. Cyborg's like, but we're America's sweethearts. We can't. It's like Eric Shea. We can't get, things. They're like, you're not America's sweethearts. Get out. And they end up getting through a trapdoor. The lady hits a button. They go through a trapdoor and end up pretty much in sewage outside, except for Starfire and Raven, who are levitating and flying. And it becomes one of the running jokes. When they get kicked out of places or get sent into the sewage, Raven never will give them a solid and have them levitate. But when they go back to Titan's Tower, they're trying to figure out what they can do to get a book back. And you end up having Ramen say, well, what they said was, and what the excuse of being canceled was, it went on too long. Interest change. Nobody's interested in the Teen Titans Go deal, so they're getting canceled. So Ramen says, well, why don't we reinvent ourselves? Why don't we just, if everybody's sick of the same old, let's change a bit and let's do some fun and whatever. And it's cool because the changing is just going through different eras and different types of comics. You get like a Marv Wolfman deal right away, and the art changes to fit the style, and it's really, really neat. And it really does play out in the art. Again, even just having it look really like the cartoon is one thing, but when you change up, you get a kick out of it. Again, something that an adult can get up when they end up fighting Trigon. You end up with this overly expositional, dialogue that's going, and even inner monologue. It's really funny when they're going to end up, and then they yell when Titan smash at the end to take down Trigon, and then boom, it switches. Now it's pretty much like it's The Walking Dead. It's zombies. It ends up where you get a couple jokes with that even most of the team are already zombies except Starfire and Raven, and they have to go through and kill everybody. And it's in black and white. It's one page. It's pretty funny. And you end up at one point where they're like, brains. And then Beast Boy goes tofu because he says, I'm a vegetarian, dude. And then you go, move on. And it's just funny stuff. And then you move on and you do get an indie comic where it's just everybody's down in the dumps and they're talking about, all these, like the idea where Beast Boy's clipping his nails and he's talking about how the crescent of the nail and the trajectory and this, and then the girls come in and you end up, even Starfire says, why must it be so challenging to be the independent young woman in today's world of the modern? So she still keeps the deal. But it's funny. And you keep doing this. And then you kind of go real quick, Archie. You get a Pokemon deal. You even get like a little cutesy anthropomorphic thing. And then a dark noir, almost like a Batman-esque deal. And then even get one panel, which I got a kick out of because it's the Teen Titans, like the Tiny Titans. Even have that. So they end up, what they had done is make all of these adventures in these different genres to then show DC, hey, pick one. And one of these will work, right? We'll be able to do. No, it doesn't work. They end up where they get kicked out again into the sewage and basically are told that they're not going to finish. We're not going to publish your comic, even if it was the last comic on Earth. Now, in that, the play from here is a little odd because she says, if it was the last comic on Earth, we still would not publish it. So then they decide that means let's get rid of all the other DC books, because then they'll have to publish it. But they just said, even you were the last, but they're going to go for it. So what they have to do is get all the other books canceled. But it's played in a fun way of not just getting canceled, but, make it so Batman doesn't solve crimes anymore, and make sure that Superman, he leaves the planet, like that sort of way. And even as they're doing it and Robin's coming up with it, you have these sarcastic Ravens like, yeah, what can possibly go wrong with that plan? It's fun. And you end up where in Gotham, the bat signal, it can't be lit. They can't figure it out. You end up having Jim Gordon and a police officer, like, it won't go on. And so obviously, if the bat signal will not go on, Batman will never go and fight crime. And they show him like, we don't know why it won't light. I don't know, Gordon. And you look over and it's just Cyborg unplugged it. It's pretty funny. And him and B Squared just laughing. And but I'm telling you, at points I got chuckles, and it really felt like I was watching the cartoon. In the meantime, too, for kids, the crime that's going to be happening then is there's a guy who steals a lollipop from a baby. But the weird play is the baby's by himself in an alley while it's raining. I think that's more of the crime. This guy stealing a lollipop. Also might have helped later with the dental bills, right? And then lollipops ain't good for you. But while that's happening, Batman's just reading a book. Alfred's sitting there because there's no bat signal. So you can't go and fight crime. It's pretty good. That ends up. And then you end up where Robin dresses up as like an old man and complete with, as you can see, my completely authentic and not at all fake research demonstration here. While he also has fake beard, fake white hair, says that there is indeed some survivors of Krypton. So he ends up saying there's survivors from Krypton. They're on this planet on the edge of the universe. And he thinks that this still isn't going to get Superman to go, and says, oh, also they have ice cream. And he's like, mother, father, ice cream? He goes. He's like, I have to go. He leaves. And while that's going on, though, just like in Gotham having a little bit of problems, at least they were just, stealing candy from a baby. It was that easy. In Metropolis, once Superman leaves, Lex gets into the biggest battle suit armor of his and just starts tearing through Metropolis. It's on fire. Everything's going down. But the Teen Titans, and specifically Robin and Raven, they don't see them walk. Like, what could possibly go wrong? And they just go off. You end up having Starfire and Raven, though, go and talk to Wonder Woman, who pretty much bores everybody to death. She's like Exposition City. They end up asking her, hey, can you really tell us the Amazon philosophy of peace and love? And it takes forever. You play out the good play of word bubbles that pretty much would not even be able to be in the air. They're filled with so many words, but it's funny. And Wonder Woman was fighting a dragon when this all started. The dragon got bored and fell asleep. But the thing is, though, I really don't know exactly what stopped all this, except I think Wonder Woman might have put herself to sleep, but it was very odd, that one. But while all mayhem is going on all throughout the DC universe, the Teen Titans are happy because they think they're going to get the call and their book will be back. And they do, in fact, get the call. And this has done well, but it's done well because in a meta deal that adults will get more, DC loves themselves a crossover event. And that's what this had actually become, because they were jumping into these other books and talking to these other people. So, yes, indeed, the Teen Titans will have a book again, and they're going to relaunch it at a new #1. The play is it's this book, so that's kind of funny. And they end up going to their local comic shop, Rock Goes Comics and Grill. They get all excited to buy it. They're like, oh, my God, this is great. This is the best thing ever. You have the classic, comic shop guy working there is like, hey, this isn't a library, bros. But they end up getting the comic. They're all excited. In a final joke from Starfire, she says, friends, this is truly the day of the Scarlet Letter. And then Raven's like, yeah, I think you mean Red Letter Day. And then Starfire says, yeah, that's what I said. And they move on. It's fun. It was really fun, actually, all this, except when they go out of the comic store, all proud and beaming that they have their new #1. There is the trinity of Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, and they're pissed. They are pissed, and they're ready to, tell them the what's what, but it does end there. So it's good. It was really good. I had fun with it. And if the art wasn't as good, it wouldn't play out. And I'm not exactly the biggest art guy. I've said this before, but in something like this, if you're going to mimic something, you're going to end up having it based on a property. You got to get it at least close. And this does way more than that. It is spot on. So if you do have a kid, especially liking the Teen Titans Go, just get it. I'm guaranteeing you they will like it. Even if it's like, oh, my kid doesn't really read comics or can't read that great, or, might be an adult like me who has problems with it. You could just page through it and have fun with it because of how much it does look like that. So overall, obviously, the scale's a little bit different for something like this, but I actually go with the idea, does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it end up where a Teen Titans Go should be fun? It should end up feeling like the show. It should have a cool story that it does it all. I mean, I could legit say as a Teen Titans Go book, this could be a 10, but I will say a 9 out of 10 on that Teen Titans Go scale. But I'm glad I got to talk about something like this because I got a kick out of it. I really did enjoy going through it. I don't know that this will be something I would review every time, and I don't know that I'll even read it every time it comes out because I'll probably lose track or whatever because I'm an idiot. But if it pops up and I'm like, I'm going to read this issue, if something looks cool or whatever, I'll jump in. I think that this is something that is, has its little niche, and I think that it'll do pretty well with the younger set, right? Because they're not adults, they're kids. But with that, I hope everybody liked this little bit of a jump in quick review of Teen Titans Go #1. But with all that, we're going to get back to the real important books. We're going to go back to the other deal, and I'll be going back to talk about Batman Full Moon, I believe, with Gray. And if you end up thinking something gets a little wacky, there is a special theme song for Gray. If you're not aware, he's a British guy who lives in Japan, and I believe he might be AI. So, and I don't mean Allen Iverson, or do I? But we're going to go off to me and Gray talking right about now. And we are back, and I'm here with Gray, the Japanese AI. What up, Gray?
I was feeling a bit bad before, but I'm all right now.
Yeah. Here's the thing is, there's the biggest kind of announcement that the podcast is changing is that song is part of the DC Comics podcast. Because if you don't speak Japanese, or maybe if you do and realize that that's got a weird version of Japanese, that song's all about you being a Japanese AI. And,
nothing about Batman or werewolves.
No, nothing about that. And nothing in that. I think Eric is rolling over in his grave. If that was... people are
what are you doing, Jim?
I mean, that would never be allowed. And because you're on the show with me, we're actually talking about a book that we've never talked about before. And in fact, I said to you, hey, are there any books, whatever? And this was one. It's Batman Full Moon. I didn't realize that it was the end of the series because sometimes these Black Label things and whatnot are 3 issues, the prestige format, whatever. I had read the first issue and didn't quite love it. I'm not, and I told you before, I'm not a big horror comic fan.
Right.
And with that, when I go to read stuff anyway, knowing that Eric's not going to let it on the show because it's Black Label, it's not in continuity, I just kind of lose track of things or whatever. So when you said, oh man, Batman Full Moon that you're reading, I thought crazy. We could do that, even though it is. And I didn't realize it was the last issue until I was about a quarter of the way through. And then I'm like, hey, things seem to be really tying up here.
They do. Jim, the first one came out back in October because I remember I was excited. It was around Halloween. So I was like, yes. So it's taken a while to get 4 issues.
Yeah. And the thing is Black Label seems to be a thing that's kind of like, these are like the last ones. Then they're going to go and eventually Vertigo and things like that. But they did have that 2-month schedule, and I never liked it. I never did like it. I remember the first time it came up was in the, for me, was the Scott Snyder, that, last Batman story, the one with Joker in the crazy jar and things like that. The name of it is escaping me right now.
Oh, God, me too, yeah.
And he kept saying, oh, it's a 2-month schedule, because people are like, oh, where is it? Where is it? It just kind of throws you. And when you have that, it kind of feels like a delay. I mean, it's 2 months. People lose track of stuff. So I think that was, I know that because most of these are a little oversized, which this is, that's how they kind of go with it. I never liked it. I didn't like it. But the idea of this Batman Full Moon, if you're not aware,
the Wolfman.
It's about the Wolfmans, the Batman and the Wolfmans. And in it, you ended up at the beginning where there is a werewolf. You get this Romanian background. It's very basic. I mean, that's the thing about this. It's more, I think, about mood and about the tension.
Atmosphere, especially with the art as well.
Yeah, the art's very atmospheric and things like that. The story itself, it just kind of like, it goes from scene to scene. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not going to deep dive.
It's pretty basic, isn't it?
Basic. Yeah. And I think that with the art and that, it just is the concept. What if Batman becomes a Wolfman? And then you just go forward with it. You kind of explore the idea of, the curse of being a Wolfman, as even opposed to being the Dracula. It even has it in here. And you get your characters like Constantine, which we'll definitely talk about in this, and Zatanna and Batman are pretty much the main, DC characters. And then you get this guy who is the Wolfman, who is a good man, but ends up having the curse. And it's kind of just, it feels like more of a concept than a really fleshed out story. But by the end, I didn't mind reading it. I read them all last night, very, very late.
Cool.
Or early. It was like 2 a.m. And I actually, because me and you record early, you're in Japan. And so I get up early. And I thought at one point, I'll go to bed and then I'll read these 4 issues. And just as an aside, because I should start pushing these things more, me and Gray do a couple shows on our Patreon, one being a Usagi Yojimbo show that we're starting today. And that's
a brand new show.
So I thought to myself, I better read something. And I figured I'll read these quickly. And it's not exactly a quick read, but I got through it. But we'll get into
Jim, also good
issue.
To see Dr. Langstrom in here as well. The original Man-Bat. So he's in here as well.
And again, this really feels like at a point, one of the concept is vampires versus Wolfmen, but not in the idea of like underworld. Like they're not, it's the idea of which curse is more sympathetic, which is going in this. Even I think it is Constantine at one point thinks, vampires seem to be like they choose that. That's something that you end up getting. And it really says a lot of vampires are scumbags, but Constantine legit throughout this whole thing, he says that he's very sympathetic and feels bad. I mean, he really actually, for one time, Constantine actually has some feelings and that, besides for himself, and says that he feels bad for people who are werewolves because it's that curse that a good person can end up getting, and it consumes you. But the play that it's just a couple times a month and things like that, it all works out. And it all works out, though. I'll tell you, I have issues with this Constantine, but it is the Batman Full Moon Book 4, written by Rodney Barnes, art and cover by Steven Sabic, Russ Wooten on letters, and it doesn't actually say the editor, so I can't give the shout out there. I'm sure it's in the back. They have extra credits, but when you start this issue, you do have this guy who is, infected by the lichen. He ends up going back to Romania. We ended the last issue where he was going off, and then Batman and Zatanna decide they have to go as well. And so you get a little bit more of the background of this guy where he has a karmic toll. And this really goes with the idea. He's trying to find a cure. He also, at one point, kind of wants to off himself, but you really can't.
We find out he's tried that, hasn't he, so many times. It doesn't work. You can't kill yourself if you're a werewolf, apparently.
And again, that's sad. I mean, the idea that he's gotten to the point where and really in this, he wants to off himself because he doesn't want to hurt people. It's not just the idea of, I can't take it, I'm a wolf man. He is afraid it's taking him over. He's afraid, and his name is Talbot, by the way. But the idea where
Christian Talbot, what a classic
Christian
name.
Talbot.
So, he's a good man. He's a good man, Jim.
Yeah, he is. And the way that they even play this out, like he was in war. He did murder people, but he did what he was told. And he's trying to figure out, why is it me who got chosen? He actually thinks the idea, because he ran into the Wolfman. They're in Romania. And I say Wolfman, but it's just werewolves. But the idea, why did it pick me, and why couldn't it have been somebody else? And he says to this, this, what is she, like a fortune teller?
Yeah, seems to be a Romanian witch.
Yeah, like a witch. And says, why was it me? And I want to I'm seeking hope, he says at the one point. And she says, and there's some really good lines, and I do like Rodney Barnes. The Philadelphia stuff and whatever is really, really good.
Yeah, that was decent. Yeah, I read quite a bit of that back in the day. It
kind of tailed off a bit, but I still thought it was really good. But some of the lines are really good where he says to this witch, I'm seeking hope. And she says, I'm giving you something more powerful, the truth. And says, you might be a good man, but there's karmic toll to everything, and that's beyond us, and this is what you got. Now, in the meantime, he has bitten Batman and turned him into the Wolfman as well, and they're trying to, and Kurt Langstrom, he's trying to get this cure. You end up having, in this, Batman dating Zatanna, so that's one of the big differences, and Constantine involved. And Constantine at this point is waiting with Langstrom. When they get the cure, he's going to pretty much,
There's quite a funny, Jim, isn't there? There's quite a funny kind of jealous love triangle going on between Constantine, Zatanna, and Bruce. Like, Zatanna's after Bruce, and she makes that clear. Like, we've got a thing going. But Constantine's like, hey, don't forget me, love,
And Constantine, again, you get the idea, and you kind of feel bad for Zatanna if you go with it. And a lot of this stuff is reading between the lines because it is so basic. But Zatanna seems to like Bruce. Bruce is so busy being Batman that he has no time for her. And then in the meantime, Constantine just wants to every second go have sex. Like, it's not like he wants a loving relationship that's built on, conversation or whatever. He just basically says, hey, love, there's a bush over there. Let's take 4 minutes. And she's like, I'm done with you. Plus, my problem with him, he looks like he's got a potato head. It is not a good-looking
I think we talked about this before. We didn't review the first issue, but he looks weird. He's Sting, but gone much worse. He's gone wrong.
And isn't it funny that I think it was last issue, one of the issues, Zatanna starts talking about tantric sex, and that's a Sting thing. And it's like, and then right after says to Constantine, and Constantine says, man, that stings. And I'm like, are they just playing with us now? Or whatever?
Maybe he was, Rodney Barnes. Look at that.
It looks like, definitely, like the idea that Sting, he likes to, and I haven't seen many interviews with him lately, but at one point he liked to talk about his, clean living and how he does the thing. This Constantine is not following that. Like, the idea that this is a character based on the look of Sting is far removed. There's a big potato head. And again, you're going to have him smoke. He smokes constantly, but that potato head gets me every time.
He smokes constantly, and he's annoying everybody he's talking to, isn't he? He's like pissing off Langstrom. He's pissing off Alfred.
Yeah,
everybody.
And I like how Rodney Barnes does it. It's not done it's funny because it happens, but it is just Constantine being Constantine. And I think that with the characters, I think Rodney Barnes gets Constantine, the voice pretty well.
It's not bad. Some of them is a bit weird, Jim, at times. It's like, that doesn't tickle your nips a bit. Well, I'm like, what? I've never heard anyone say that in the UK.
I'm telling you, I think that might be just like, what do they say about this? Like, it'd be me. Hello, love. That's all he'd say.
Hello, love.
And so through this, you do end up where Langstrom, he's trying to find the cure. In the meantime, Constantine's sitting there. And then you have Talbot's friends who end up being, the downtrodden. They end up all finding each other at this church. You ended up having this woman who ends up letting them in, and really was the play of this Talbot saying, you don't want to trust me. Like, why are you being nice? And they all accepted him. And it's a ragtag group here. But at last issue, they ended up chaining him in the basement because he didn't want to hurt anybody. You knew that he was just going to rip the chains.
Oh my God, those chains, they weren't strong enough. No chance, were they, Jim?
No, and
that
you knew that.
Woman, what he did to her was pretty harmless, wasn't it?
I think she might be a nun. I'm not really sure exactly the deal, but she came in and she's like, no, and a normal thing would have been, no, Talbot, I know you're in there in that Wolfman somewhere. And the Wolfman would run away. No, he ripped her arm off.
Yeah, he wasn't messing about.
No, so she's there in bed. They're kind of talking to her. And the whole play is, forgiveness and acceptance and redemption. But we're talking about a Wolfman. And the one younger kid, he's confused. Like, he wants to be mad about this. And he wants to get really upset. And she's like, no. Don't be mad. It'll be fine.
He's having to go at Alfred, isn't he? Because Alfred's there, like, talking about they're going to help. The Wayne Foundation is helping get out with the damages and stuff.
Yep. And then they try to explain to Alfred, because Alfred does say, listen, Bruce Wayne, the Wayne Foundation does all this. And they say, you don't understand. Again, this is not soapboxing like some end up doing. They say, that's fine, the money. But what these people need is to see somebody cares. Like the idea of, if I end up sending my kid a card with money in it for Christmas, or if I go and visit him and give him a hug, he'll like the hug more. Though my kids would probably like the money, because they're money-hungry jerks. But you know what I mean?
Come on, Jim, they'd like it both, I'm sure. Both, as long as there's money involved.
I would give them the hug. They'd say, that's nice, where's the money? That's I'd be like, that's your money. But that whole play of, if he wants to help, get him here, because then they could see him and he'd inspire people to say, oh, look at this.
Do it in person.
Yeah. And it was pretty good. And you see that it kind of does, affect Alfred a bit. He realizes that that's the case. And through all this, too, one of the big plays throughout is that they know Bruce was infected and becomes the Wolfman, Bruce himself. And I'm talking Commissioner Gordon, Constantine. They don't know he's Batman, though. And when he goes out as Batman and turns into a Wolfman, it's really cool, because you end up with him with the costume on. Constantine just keeps bringing it up. Well, if Bruce was infected, why did that Wolfman end up having a Batman costume on? I think that he's having a go with it. Like, he realizes and understands that he's trying to get somebody else.
Yeah, he's messing with him, isn't he?
Yeah. And so people are even talking about it. And even Gordon at one point is like, hey, what's up with Bruce? Where is he? Whatnot. And you have Alfred play dumb through the whole thing. I don't know. I'm a humble servant. I don't know. Yeah, but why was he with the Batman costume? I don't know. I have no idea. And Gordon even's like, a simple F off would do, Pennyworth. And they go, but that's kind of cool in the deal. But
it's what he says here, Alfred, the language, Jim, it's hilarious. I am but a humble servant and harbour neither information nor interest in that of which you speak.
Yeah. And he goes, a simple fuck off would do, Pennyworth. And it's fun because they're two older guys talking.
It's a weird Alfred, Jim. We're just going to ask you, what do you think of the R? It's a weird take on Alfred.
He, at points, too, he has to kind of spring into action. This Alfred looks like he's 93.
He does, yeah.
I mean, he looks like he's about to just fall over. It's really bad. Or Michael Caine. There you go. We did it. So you end up where you go back to Romania, and this whole thing of Talbot thinking back at the werewolf and how he got affected, and while you end up having Bruce and Bruce and Zatanna trying to figure this out as well and trying to find him. But the idea in this issue, and this is exactly where I looked to see if this was the last one, because Talbot, who was saying, I'm a good man, he goes to the witch and she says, it's what it is. I mean, there is no cure at this point. It is what it is. It's upsetting, but you did do some things and you might be a good man. It's karmic fate, but also it just seems almost random, and some good people will have this. This is just your fate. And you end up where he decides, and screw it. I mean, basically just throws up his arms and goes, if I'm a Wolfman,
let me embrace the monster inside. Yeah.
Again, it's almost, in my mind, that's, suicide by Wolfman. He's just going to let himself go. He's not even going to try to remain Talbot the human. He's just going to become the Wolfman. And you do see in these woods, you do see these wolves come out and things like that, again, he might be like, I'll run with the pack. I'll have some fun, whatever. I'll sniff some butts. I don't know what the wolves do. But he decides that's it. The curse, I'm embracing it. I'm going to buy it. And even says, because with this, too, with Bruce being bitten by Talbot, he can see through Talbot's eyes and he can sense him through that almost like Wolfman hive mind. And they did tell Zatanna and him, one of the cures would be for Talbot to die. If Talbot dies, that will break the curse. And Bruce, almost like the vampire thing, Bruce will be fine. But the idea at this point, Talbot just even says to Bruce, like, just accept it. This is it. That's what we are. Just accept it. And now we're going to have.
He's almost like saying, join me. let's be brothers, brothers in wolves or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Let's run with the pack. And you end up where the big play, again, Rodney Barnes, I think, is playing with the idea of belonging. He ended up where Talbot was accepted by those people, from Potter's Grove, and they were from, the downtrodden.
The poor, the disenfranchised, yeah. It's got a little community in that church, haven't we?
Yeah, and so that was kind of like a pack or a family.
Yeah.
But at this point, he's giving up, and he just wants to be this. But he is telling Bruce, it's not like, hey, Bruce, come with me and we'll rule the world. He's tired. He's just done. He wants to accept the deal, but Bruce obviously wouldn't do that. So we're going to get a fight. But the problem is, when the moon comes up and you become the werewolves, you don't really have control of yourself either.
No. These werewolves are full on like monsters. They like give into the beast, don't they, Jim? There's no like reasoning with them.
Yeah. And that's the thing where you had, and it's a good scene to set up, where you had Talbot attack the nun or whatever she is. When he did that and she said, listen, I know you're in there or whatever. And he just attacked because he's a monster. At one point, Talbot goes to attack Zatanna. Bruce, as a werewolf, does end up saving Zatanna. She uses magic as well, but he seems to be able to control it a little. Like, there is still a Bruce, and I think he still has a little bit of that willpower to kind of fight it off, but it also
I thought it was Bruce, the Bruce werewolf, though, when she says, like, Bruce, can you hear me? I thought it was Bruce, like, dives out, like, grrr.
You might be right. I got the idea with it. And again, it gets very dark and the thing's
By the way, did you think Zatanna suddenly became naked for some reason?
Yeah, I was going to mention you. I'm like, look at her. Looks and legitimately suddenly turns into Poison Ivy nude. It's like, what happened? But it's very stylistic. And there are some really good panels.
There's some great art scenes. Yeah.
There's one where you do
wolf attacks.
When you see Talbot going back and thinking about when he ran into the Wolfman or when he was the Wolfman back in war, it's awesome. And the coloring is great. It's
scenes.
Really, really good. It's like stuff that you would like want to have signed. It's that good. But yeah, naked Zatanna. And then later, you're like, okay, she's not naked, but she's definitely got a see-through skirt. Like, it's really playing that deal,
it's turned into a British Hammer horror movie from the 70s,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Ingrid Pitt and Ursula Andress in it.
The funniest thing, I bet you Rodney Barnes would get a kick of you saying that. I have a feeling that that's what they're going with a bit, too. And so you end up having, Wolfman on Wolfman fight is what you end up having. And it looks great. But again, it's not much of a story. It just ends up being, but I think, again, it's the idea of acceptance, the idea of wanting a family, the idea of fate and karmic, retribution, all that stuff rolled up into one. And then it comes to the point where as they're fighting, you have where Langstrom comes up with a kind of a cure a bit and says, hey, I got this. There's, I'm telling you, Potato Head Constantine, who really needs to maybe do something with that hair. He's like, okay, well, there you go. And he's only there
a few pounds as well. Looking a bit fat faced there, Jim, isn't he?
Yeah, really. It's so fat. And what I do like about this Constantine is he wants to pretend that he doesn't want to help anybody. Especially, he's kind of jealous of Bruce being with Zatanna, but he will help. Right. And even if it's just because of Zatanna, he will help. But he keeps thinking of and he even says, and he calls Langstrom Bat Face. He's just so annoying. But Langstrom says, if I can get the cure, can you get it to Wayne? He's like, yeah, that's the only reason I'm here, Bat Face. At one point, Langstrom's like, can you just leave and go somewhere else? Because you're bothering me. But Zatanna does, as this whole thing goes, Zatanna does go up and talks to the witch about the idea of how you can cure this, what's the cure itself, and says Christian Talbot's cursed with the mark of the wolf. And he does have a pentagram on his hand from when he ended up getting bit. And says the only way, his death, that's the thing that cures all things, death. And that's it.
Any werewolf that he's turned, anyone he's turned, they will be cured, but it means he's got to die. Yeah, like you say, it's like the head vampire thing, isn't it?
It's exactly. Now, it's a shame. I'll tell you, it's a shame that the lady got her arm ripped off and just didn't get turned into a werewolf, because then she would have been fully cured.
Oh, yeah.
But Zatanna has what she has to do. And so you do have a really good thing. And again, though, the funny thing is that while this is going on, Langstrom is working so hard to find a cure. And what happens is Zatanna just comes out of a portal then from talking to that witch and just stabs the guy. Just ends up running this knife into him and kills him.
Special magical dagger.
Yeah. And again, this is the thing that he wanted. And she says, "I'm sorry," and pulls the dagger out.
But Jimmy's a good job she got him, because look at Bruce Werewolf. He's down and
he
out.
He is down. He's about to be killed. Like, he is definitely. And again, I think that some of the play might be that he's new and he might not be fully, you know what I mean? And this
That's
guy.
it, exactly. That'll be it, yeah. Christian Talbot's been going for years, hasn't he? Since was it the First World War or Second World War? It's not quite clear, but
Yeah, exactly. And you end up where she says, "I'm sorry," and he says, "Don't be." And then he says, "If I had gotten a second chance, I would have done good things with my life," and ends up dying. That's like his last words, and it's a shame. And because with that too, you end up.
Great timing. Constantine suddenly appears, doesn't he, like through a portal. Hey, Langstrom, I may have pulled a cure out of his ass.
And that makes it just so tragic, because Bruce is fine, free and clear, but Langstrom came up with a cure, and it would have given it to him, and he's dead. He's just
Bad
there,
timing.
dead.
What a
Talbot's
shame.
dead. I mean, it is instantly. The guy breathes his last breath, and Constantine comes in and says, "Hey, Langstrom, man, pulled a cure out of his house."
They got a cure. It's over, John, says Zatanna.
And so this is why I think it's a pretty funny Constantine when Zatanna goes, "It's over, John. It's over, Johnny." And he's like, "Really? I just I traded a year of my life to a demon to conjure myself here for nothing." He's pissed off. I wish Zatanna's like, "You're just that piece of crap." It says, show some respect for the dead. And he's like, "Oh yeah, right," and kind of bows his head. And then Bruce goes and says, "Let's go home." He's ready to go home, and that's it. That's pretty much the end. And you do end up seeing that the lady's fine. She's going to recover, and Bruce does take the advice of even that kid and goes with Constantine there. I don't know that
he's like a bad penny, and he keeps turning up.
And
you
so
can't get rid of him.
Like doing like a soup kitchen kind of thing, or food for people who need it. And you end up where Bruce is there, who looks a lot like Tom Cruise suddenly in the one panel, but he's there. And he's there because Zatanna's there, but then they're like, "Hey, you want to help here?" And he's like, "Not really." They're like, "Well,
if you're not going to pitch in, John, buzz off." That's Zatanna, like telling him, "Do one."
The one person's like, "Hey, if you're going to hang around, Mr. Constantine, we got pots that need cleaning." He goes, "Bullocks to the lot of you," and it was the lady with her one arm, and he leaves. And then there's Bruce, and you do have the people who were involved with Talbot. They're giving out clothes, and that was the thing. These people need clothes and food, and they're there to do it. But there's Bruce, and looks very happy.
Yeah, he's got his apron on. Jim, is he cooking as well? I think he is, isn't he?
He is, and with that, Alfred's like looking there. Alfred looks so damn old, and Alfred's probably like, "You are the worst cook ever, Bruce."
Oh, he looks kind of happy though in that panel there.
He
at the
does.
end, doesn't
He almost looks like a
smiling
father who's like, he's proud of him, but. Also, Bruce has to be like, "Well, there's some ladies in the crowd here." He unbuttons his shirt down like 5 buttons. Look at this guy. But yeah,
don't forget, he's a playboy. He'll always be a playboy.
Zatanna is there. Constantine leaves, and then you end up where it almost feels like, okay, now they're a couple. Bruce is going to have time with her. They're going to do it, kind of in a Superman-esque deal, because she must end up making them levitate up.
I know, that's a weird scene, isn't it?
Kind of an odd thing to do. Just, this is me, you might, in front of a church, but they're probably like, "Get this heathen out of here." Black magic yelling, but yeah, there it is. And they're there with all the
church tower like cracking in the background, being hit by lightning.
Lightning's going. There is like a weird, like celestial light coming. I think they're coming for retribution.
It's about to be struck, isn't it?
Holy moly, this church is in big trouble. But yeah, it was nice.
No, we get a happy ending, don't we? It's a lovely little happy ending there.
Yeah, and again, the happy and get an ending that isn't so happy with Talbot, but it works out for him as well. Yeah. But it's a shame. And him saying, "I wish I could have done something better." Almost looking at this, if he could have gotten a cure, that would have been a second lease on life. And the second deal, he really would have made sure. Though it seems like he was a good enough man. He did follow orders in war, that sort of thing. But he seemed to be a good enough man and didn't want to hurt people. So he was trying
his best to fight it. Yeah.
I mean, he even came to Gotham to try to figure this out. He didn't come to Gotham to, cause mayhem and destruction.
No.
He wanted to try to figure out and maybe get somebody who could cure him, and it just never happened. He ended up dying, but he was happy to die if that was the case then. And Bruce is cured, and now he's floating like a heathen next to the church. But What would you give it?
For this issue, I'm going to give 7 out of 10, but for the whole series, but I think 7.5. I really enjoyed it. I like the supernatural, Jim. You know I like a bit of horror.
Yeah, you
I like the
it more
werewolves.
than me. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
said before, I think I did like it more, that we talked about it. I said before we started, I was around a 6.5. I think I'm a 7. And I'll even go. I'll go like a 7.3, 7.5 for the whole thing. I think that it's one of those that I don't think I'm going to remember this story 8 years from now. You know, I don't even think a year from now I'm going to go back and ever read it again. It's not one of those things, but pretty good.
I might revisit it just for the art, because I do like Stephen Subbich's art. He did the Riddler year 1. I don't know if you read that back. That was pretty decent. That was very dark as well, kind of creepy.
The thing is, he definitely has that art. Like, I wouldn't want to see this art on, maybe it would work with Green Arrow, I was going to say, but some book that's like a full out, like, 4-color book, but anything
Old Man
like
Constantine. How about that? Potato Head Constantine.
But yeah, I think that it's well worth looking at. The first 3 issues are already in the app, so you can check that out. One of the big things, that's good about it being like every 2-3 months or whatever, they're usually always in there, but you can go and check that out in the app. And then if you have Ultra or whatever, it'll eventually hit this 4th one, but it's worth checking out. It ends up
I had some people say
enough.
they're going to pick up the trade. It's only like 4 issues, but they are kind of oversized. They're a little bit longer. So, yeah, it'd probably read better altogether, wouldn't it, Jim?
And I usually never say it'll read better in trade, because I rarely read trades, because I read things as they come out.
Right.
So I've already read it, but catching up in the 3 issues and then reading this as well, it did read pretty well. It actually did read well. And I think that, maybe in trade, just to sit there for an afternoon or whatnot and just, delve into it. It doesn't mean anything. It's a black label, but it's pretty cool. And kind of deals with that idea of these characters and what they feel about, the Wolfman and but also the acceptance and wanting to, be a good person. And it ends up working out pretty well. So I'll go 7 for this, and I'll go, like I said, 7.3, just a little less, but that's probably because I don't love the dark stories and stuff like that. But I think it was well worth it. So I'm glad that you had inspired me to read it, and we will be doing The Last Halloween as one of the things that you are reading as well that I haven't been. So I'll be catching up on that.
Cool.
And so and that's only like halfway through, right? I believe that it's like
we've just had issue 5 of 10. Yeah, we are halfway.
That's cool. I thought you were going to say that it was 12 issues, so 10 is good. I actually like 10. So yeah, we'll be reading that. I'm probably doing a bunch of other things, but if you do like hearing Gray, you should check out his YouTube channel, which is Wakazashi's Tea House. That'll be in the show notes of this show. But also, me and Gray do a bunch of things over on our Patreon, patreon.com/weirdscience. One of them being Usagi Yojimbo, that we're going to go off and do in just a moment. So with all of that, thanks for joining me, Gray. Thanks a lot. Jim. I always love talking to you. And people did say once Eric had left and I said, hey, I'm going to be doing things. I told you already that when I said me and you do the absolute stuff that I should have mentioned as well. They said, oh, that's a perfect choice. So people love Gray. People love Gray way more than me. So, yeah, I'm sure.
Even though I'm just a Japanese AI.
Just a Japanese AI. But yes, people did really like our absolute Wonder Woman episode. So I was glad.
I enjoyed talking about it with you.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And we have a bunch of absolute books coming up as well. So with all of that, thanks for joining me. And we're going to move on to the next book. And here we are for 2 last books. This will end the podcast. And these books I'll be talking with Zach. What up, Zach?
What's up, Jim?
What's up is we have Batgirls, and then we'll be doing Birds of Prey, but we'll kick it right in with Batgirls number 5, written by Tate Bromhall, Takeshi Miyazawa on pencils and inks, Wayne Foucher on inks, and Mike Spicer colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, and you do end up having edited by Jessica Aberby. That's a name that I have not heard often, but here we are, and this, we were talking before we started recording, the idea of this book. I love Cass. Cass is too. Probably my favorite Batgirl. She love her long solo series. I thought it was great. I read that very quickly when I first started reading comics because I do like Cass a lot. She's progressed a bit, or some people might argue if it's progression, but the idea that we've had a couple books. She's been in things like Tynan's Detective. You end up having a Batgirl series by Clunrad. All that. At the moment now, she fully talks. That's one of the bigger differences from before. But the problem is that there's not a lot of other progression. What you end up in these series, always it's, oh no, Shiva's in town to shade me. say that Batman is a bad influence and not making me hard as rock, and then ends up usually by the end of these stories, and it just happened with the Clone Rats, it happened in Detective Comics, it keeps going, where they'll come to an understanding at the end, that both of them will kind of come to a middle ground. She will say, well, I guess you're doing okay, but I still want you to do this, and then disappears, and then you end up Cass saying, well, I know you're not the greatest mom, but you tried. And that seems where we're going again. In the meantime, this series, where we're at issue 5, it hasn't been doing much.
No.
I mean, we could start doing, and it's funny because when me and Luke Hollywood, when we're doing our manga podcast, we have a bunch of manga reading clubs, things like that. And when we have a long arc, which in manga, there's a lot of longer arcs, but when we do, we tend to name it after what's happening. The Entertainment District was one that we went through in Demon Slayer that some people argue with me isn't that long, but still, you end up on Spy Family. And this is for people who know manga, the idea of the boat. Oh, the boat. And so in this, it almost became like the train. It was always the train. Now, we're only a couple issues in, but this isn't the same as manga. This is a monthly book, and usually in an arc, you're going to get more progression than kind of just stuck on a train for a bit. Not that it was the whole thing, but it felt like it. It felt like you end up going, and really at one point, all it seemed to go with is that Tate Brownell wanted to give you that in-your-face deal of her being able to read the body language and things like that. It did get a little bit over the top. I mean, at one point, you almost had her sweat, anger, giggle. It wasn't even body language. She was just saying things like wind, smell. And so that did actually in this issue, they back off from that a bit in this issue.
I think they took notes.
Yeah, instead, Tate Brownell then decides that what you're going to do in this one is reiterate things that we already had. You're going to get flashbacks in this issue from this series, and then add on to that more continuity that then kind of gets things. And I know that everything continuity-wise, but some things aren't going to jive. And when you end up going in and you have this deal where she's not mentioning, David Kane has not been mentioned a lot at all. And even with that, some people have even said, okay, I get it. They're wiping that off. I think Eric might have even said that to me, that I said, oh, I thought they were going to talk about David Kane, orphan stuff. And he said, no, I think they're going before that. So that's kind of gone. We're going to, nope, it's here. It's in this issue. And it's okay, but it feels out of place when you do get to it. And some of these things, like you said, where it seems like Tate Brownell, somebody got to him and said, hey, the body language thing is not working. It's distracting. It ends up pulling you out. So he got notes there. But other notes are, oh, didn't you know about Orphan / David Kane? And, oh, I better throw that. It feels like some of the stuff's just kind of thrown
done on
in.
the fly.
Yeah, willy-nilly a bit. But in the meantime, again, the progression of this series, it needs to pick up. Now, I say that, I still think that this is probably the best issue of the series. And I
agree.
I love Cass. I can't say that enough of how much I love her. And I don't think that he's doing a bad job with her. She's not doing much of a job. So in that, we also talk about there's not real solid sales numbers out. You can look and see these numbers that are very small sample size. But I say all the time that it gives you some trends and things. But lo and behold, Batgirl is in the top 50. And we were talking before, there's books like, say, a Batman and Robin. You even brought up to me the idea, and I had a video about it, the Phil Kenny Johnson book, which is my favorite book probably right now of the all-in books. That's not in the top 50. So why is Batgirl?
I genuinely don't know.
And so some people, and this happened before when I was talking about Poison Ivy at points and things like that, and even the Catwoman series at one point, it was really being driven by variant covers. So I don't know. I'm not into that. I don't collect the variants and things like that. That may be some of it. But I think people love Cass. I love Cass. You love Cass. I think that people want to see a Cass book. So with that, most of the time, the biggest praise I could give this series is it's not messing up.
Right.
But it's just kind of there. And then by the end,
it's not messing up, but it's not adding anything really either. I mean, we're just kind of just reiterating everything that's already happened to her. And it's just okay, all right. I mean, like you said, how many times do we got to see Cass and Shiva do this song and dance? And it's just can we please just get a little bit give Cass her own enemy? Give her something that's not related to the League of Shadows or Assassins or whatever you want to call. let's just go somewhere. But no, instead we got to do this crap over and over and over again.
It's true. And again, there's ways of doing things like you could say, but Jim or Zach, like, you guys don't really love Cy Spurrier's Flash, but he's really that's too much. Like, you don't have to go that far. There is a middle ground of basic bitch to crazy experimental cosmic horror, right?
Right.
But in this, I get the idea, and I do say, people might say, listen, a lot of people wouldn't like or know Cass. But again, I don't know that you're getting the cool stuff about Cass. This almost feels like what you're getting in some of the background is Tate Brumhall proving to already fans who know the background that he also knows the background. It doesn't feel like
I've said that throughout this whole series. Yes, that's what it feels like. It feels like, hey guys, look, I know Cass. I need brownie points.
Yeah, that's what it doesn't feel like, oh my God, let me show you some really cool stuff, because it's been kind of boring. But again, it doesn't do things wrong.
I got to ask you this, Jim. What's the coolest thing Cass has done in the series so far that isn't a flashback?
I would say, well, I was just going to say getting high and knocked out maybe in this issue. But really, there's fights, but even the fights at one point...
But, like, is there any memorable one?
No, my favorite, I'll tell you my favorite moment. I know an exact favorite moment. It's when the one guy came into the car, the train car, looking to go to the bathroom, and Cass started fighting him because he had to take a crap. That was hilarious. But even then, like, you have, and what ends up here, where Cass she put a tracker on Shiva. Shiva got knocked out. They took Shiva. She ends up putting a tracker on her, and this is her going to and finding the cave of this Unburied. Now, the Unburied has been thrown out. It's a threat. We did see them, but even then, the battle and the fight was very quick. I said when we did the last issue, it was a little bit hard to follow at points. But when you get this, I still don't look at, oh my God, the Unburied. How are they going to beat them? The only reason you would say that is because Cass keeps getting her ass kicked,
She's
which
been
is
beaten
fine.
3 times by them now.
So they end up going to this cave. This other guy, he seems to stay behind. That might be something that'll come into play, and he might just be. That might only be.
He's going to start the plane as they run away.
So she goes into this cave. Now, what you're going to get here is a bunch of Cass doing things, but also with these flashbacks. Some flashbacks older, some from this series. Just the idea, and the flashbacks end up being just, hey, I think that Batman, made you soft. Or, hey, you got to be harder than this. Oh, you made me soft. And all these things where Cass is going through the cave. And again, I don't think newer readers to the character would quite get that when she sees a kid, this ends up triggering some of her memories when she was a kid, being raised by the League and being raised as a weapon. So it is kind of, to her, she gets mad, but she's also looking for her mom. But then we get this Unburied who, like I said, I don't think that they're a real, crazy, cool group. Anytime that Cass gets involved with anything, it will end up being a league of some sort, Assassin, Shadows, whatever you want to call it at points. It's going to be something like that, just like this Unburied. Now, they start talking at one point, and they're talking about what they've done. And this is where I think that it really shows Tate Brumhall has left some things on the table and really didn't go, because they're kind of like, man, we did it. Like this Unburied, they're like, we are the best. We ended up and said, Nissa's League of Shadows lays broken before it could even catch flight. Yeah, because we only had like 2 panels with Nissa. At the one point, it was a cliffhanger page. And then again, you never got to even settle down with them. And even that, with the idea was you were just walking around on a train. It just was set up poorly. And then the blood, which we barely
I never even remember that name.
And the blood is the guys and the steel. And the blood's reduced to chaos at last. I'm like, we hardly knew ye. And then Shiva's order is at its knees. Again, something that just kind of popped up and never really got to settle down. And it might have been a better play to do some sort of really cool, adventure with Cass first. And then at the end of that first arc, she runs into Shiva and then get to this. Establish some fun factor, establish some really cool stuff before you do get to this. Because at this point, it feels like we're just being told that things are big and bad and cool and left behind, which we didn't really do much with. And then in the meantime, there's Cass. She's going around. I did mention you. I'm looking at it again. The one guy, Chodak, when you see him, he looks like Negan so much to me from The Walking Dead. But even these guys, like, we don't like, you have this one lady then who's like, snip, snip. We're going to get
Nergui or whatever, Nergai. I don't know how to pronounce it.
And again, these names are hard to even remember. But what happens is this was a dupe. Cass ends up thinking that she's tracking Shiva. They found the tracker. So they end up where they're waiting for. She gets kicked, but then and again, while this fight's going to go, she's going to see the Shiva of the mind saying, get up, Cassandra, your enemies will not defeat themselves. So she's getting inspired by what she thinks her mom would want or want her to do. That's fine. And you do get a lot of the things that you're going to get some psychological stuff with her of the mind. But again, you have to even them out with a progression of a story. There is fights here, so I can't say there's not fights or action. But even then, it's like the same old, same old. It's just ninja fight action. And by this point, we've seen it a million times.
Yeah, in the series, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Cass ends up beating all these guys and then ends up having to fight Chodak, and then he pretty much kicks her ass. And she ends up falling down into a pit, and she's in a poppy field. And she gets knocked out. I mean,
it's that blue flower field where they were trying to imply.
Yeah, it's the
healing
crazy
thing
deal. It's the healing thing. It plays off like it's a poppy field, but it is that blue lotus type of deal that they had, and even Shiva took to heal. So again, though, you're there, and we're at page 14, and what she has done up till now is just walk into a cave, see a couple people fight some ninjas, and remembered some things. So the progression, I guess, this is the thing. If you love Cass, and this is like the book that you get, there's nothing wrong with it. You can go through it really quick.
Yeah.
And even this, it's kind of like a half silent issue. So you go through it real quick. But by the end, I never feel like we have a lot to talk about or a lot to like say, oh my God, that was awesome. You got to read it. What I would still say in issue 5, if somebody said, should I read the Batgirl book? Right away, I'd just say, do you like Cassandra? They say, yes. Yeah, read it. It's Cassandra.
I'd read on Infinite.
Hey, there's Shiva, whatever. It's not like something that I would get done an issue and close it. Even this one that I do think is one of the better ones. And say, oh my God, go into the Slack and say, oh my God, yeah, everybody, you got to read Batgirl. It's great. It just is what it is. And it just doesn't seem to want to go up or down or whatnot, because when you end up having Cass fall asleep, she goes through a montage. You have a full page spread. And I do know that I don't love the art in this. I know some people really do. I think that at points it looks better than other times, but it's not my favorite. But it does what it has to do.
I think there's a few standout panels, but overall I agree. I don't think it's the best art, but it's
just kind of mid to me. It's just kind of good. Like, not even mid. I would say it's good enough that I don't say, oh man, this art stinks, but it's not good enough for me, again, to, oh my God, you got to see this panel. It tells the story enough and it does it well. So you end up where you go through the spread, and if you look at the spread page, you do have, back to the thing, one of the biggest things that happened in the series was Shiva telling Cass, when you were born, that was the softness. I needed to get the softness. It was you. And this kind of keeps playing on. But even in this, it's like she's fighting herself and all this stuff going. But it ends up being the idea like you would have anytime you have a Cassandra book, it seems, is, am I just a weapon? Was I forged to be something? My own person? Am I going to end up like my mom? It's the same things that keep on being, thrown in. And that's what we get. And then all of a sudden, Stephanie of the mind, she comes in and gets involved. But this is something we just had. And I don't think the Kloonrads are very good. It seems like you're aping them now. That's not what you want to do. Do not ape the Kloonrads.
This is also like a homage to like the original series too, because there's an issue where Cassandra, she's drowning or whatever, and she sees Stephanie, who at that time was dead, quote unquote. This was before they retconned it or whatever, and it's just this is the vibes I get from it. It's like, okay, but are we going to do anything impactful with it? And it's just like, oh no, we're going to say you miss me, and you got to get back out there. You can do whatever you want, Cassandra Cain.
Here's what this seems like to me. It's a clip show of greatest hits just done again. You know what it is? It's Taylor Swift re-recording her songs so that
Taylor's version.
This is Batgirl Taylor's version. We'll call it Tate's version.
Okay, yeah,
that's what it seems.
Well,
so
you remember that book we got not too long ago, Life of Wolverine by Jim Zub or whatever, where it's like retells his history. This is what this feels like almost.
Yeah. So again, if you don't know, I don't know that it's exciting enough, but you will get some of the greatest hits. You will see. And again, Steph, being in that Batgirl's book, which the Clone Reds thought they were 13. They said in an interview that was bad. But this ends up where you get this whole, okay, there they are. But again, it's like, hey, come with me. What are you doing? Hey, we're in a dream. Even breaks like the fourth wall in the dream and says, why don't you speak? This actually has more of a oomph if we would have had old Cassandra that didn't talk and then suddenly she could talk in a dream. But she ends up, it's almost playing that. But she does mention David Kane. She ends up saying, my dad, David Kane. I mean, and it was horrific. And one of the bigger things with her and David Kane would be the Batman and Robin Eternal. I believe it was that one where you did go and see a lot of stuff with Mother and all the stuff with David Kane and how Cass ended up very similar. And that's why I always want to have more of Cass with Damian. Very similar deal of being raised to be killers. And Cass in that, I mean, it's bad. She had to wake up in the morning and pretty much kill a certain amount of people. And it kept getting incrementally bigger of how many people she had to kill before she could eat breakfast. And it was awful. And David Kane's awful. He kind of ended up getting kicked down in a pit at the end of that. So I'm assuming that's still the deal. But she's saying, my dad ended up doing this. I didn't know my mom. I didn't know Shiva. So I was praying. And it's the one thing, and her name was Orphan, but the idea of somebody who is an orphan wishing or hoping, oh my God, I hope my parents are the King of England. We had that a lot in Shazam and stuff. And me and actually Simon talked about it this weekend on the Patreon, or this week on the Patreon Spotlight. But when she met Shiva, oh, she's as bad as everyone. She was hoping Shiva was good because she wants to be good. And so she's caught in that rut. She's caught in that circle of she doesn't think she can be good.
Parents are bad, so I guess I'm bad.
So she has to be bad, but she's done better since then. But she still worries about that and even says, and this is a good, I know it's the greatest hits, but this is what makes the issue pretty good, I think, with Cass saying stuff like, I was hoping that I could see some softness in my mom. Now, we already saw that Shiva said the softness was Cass, so you have that back and forth. But when she did see Shiva, she said, everything that I saw that I hated about myself, I saw in her, and I don't know how to feel. And the weird, though, thing is, she says to, Stephanie of Dreamscape says, oh, my mom just came into town, and I did, but she just did in that Batgirl's book too. And again, Stephanie, I wish that you had a little more room here so Stephanie could bring up the deal with Clue Master, because again, you're singing the same song to Steph. Steph has the same problem, having a father who's a villain and things. So when you do have this, though, it's basically like, well, accept yourself. Cass does even see this little kid deal and, herself in it, but she's going to go back. When she wakes up, we're done. She's hanging there. She got captured, obviously, and she's hanging next to Shiva, and Shiva says, you get done your beauty sleep. Good, let's go. I'm like, we did nothing. Again, it's a good issue. But
Cass wandered in there. She remembered a lot. She got beat again, hallucinated some, and then now she's back with her mom again.
Yeah, 5 issues. Now we get the 6th issue, you would hope. But even then, if they fight their way, just say next issue, they fight their way out of this, the whole cavern deal, it all falls down. You're like, well, it won't feel satisfying of them taking down the unburied, because we hardly got anything of anything. And it's a walk down memory lane. And by the end, I think that 6 issues, like already 5 issues, it feels like we had 1.5. It doesn't feel like a lot of things have happened, but I still end up liking it enough.
Right. If you take the past 5 issues and just try and sum it up, it's like first 3 issues, just, Shiva shows up, tells Cass there's danger coming. Cass don't believe her. They fight some ninjas, right?
They go to the Chinese restaurant and people die and fight ninjas. Get on a train.
They get on a train and Shiva starts to win her over. Then, oh no, Nissa's involved. I can't trust you. Oh no, ninjas show up. They take her mother. Now I gotta get involved. Now we're here.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we did.
5 issues.
That's all we've done. We haven't done anything. And so hopefully things get tied up. But I just want this bit, and if Shiva's going to stay in the book, then get this stuff out of the way and let's go do something new. But we'll see. But what would you give it?
It's tough. I mean, to me, this has been a solid 6 series, but this is a better issue. So, I mean, I don't quite want to go 7. I think I'm going to go 6.8. because you're right. This is a better issue. It does a little more. I do like the fact that they point out, like, oh, here's what the continuity we're playing with is. I'd like it to be a little bit more nailed down and just not be like, oh, well, everything happened. And it's just like, that don't work. But the artwork is decent. It's fine. There's a few pages. I love that page where she's like jumping down the cavern. I think that's a really good page. But overall, I mean, it's okay. It's fine. I wish we were doing more.
Yeah, so do I. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give it a 7 just to give it a 7 because it is the best of the deal. But again, it's weird. I couldn't defend if somebody said really defend the book and tell me why it's good. I really couldn't tell them, but I think it's better than some of the other books. And
like I said, it's definitely better than Batgirls by Clunrat. I'll give them that every day of the week.
Yeah, that book's
at least it takes her seriously.
Yeah, and she's not doing things, but maybe she will eventually. We'll see. Yeah. But we'll move to the next book. They kind of go together in the way that there's not a lot of progression. We have ninja fights, but we end up having the Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey number 19. Every time we talk about this, I bring it up that people had this on their year-end 2 years in a row. Some people had it on their year-end deal after 2 issues. And I think it's, again, there are books where I think that when you're just sitting there reading and a fan or whatever, there are teams and characters that you want to have succeed, so you will support it. I love that. I love the idea that if you end up where any Nightwing book I would get, my favorite character, even Dick Grayson, anything I would get, it doesn't mean they're all good. Right. And so when you have Birds of Prey, people desperately wanted a Birds of Prey book, and they got it. But even then, some people at the beginning were like, well, Barbara's not in and I'm out. I actually argued with the guy and said, why don't you give it a chance? I mean, I want everybody to give every book a chance. Then I started reading it. I'm like, maybe don't give it a
maybe
chance.
I was wrong.
And then what happened with Kelly Thompson with this, and Sin, the character Sin, shows up, never explain anything about Sin, anything of her background, of, again, another character like Cass, and Cass is in the book, another character that has been raised to be a weapon, raised by the League, and in that, it just was like, oh, she's there, and then this whole thing where she's on Themyscira, that ends up skewing things, and then this Megara gets involved, that really feels, and Kelly Thompson, I've heard, is kind of a disciple of Brian Michael Bendis. So you do get it sometimes with the dialogue, the chit-chatty dialogue, and she likes to think it's clever and quick and whatnot. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And again, before we go any further, I want to tell everybody, I actually like Kelly Thompson. Like, I like most of the things she's done, but this book stinks. But in that, the idea of, but what Bendis does a lot when he came to DC, if you don't know the characters, you know what the best thing to do is change them so they're your characters. And this Megara deal with Sin just completely changes her. But yet, what has it done? She's just kind of hanging. And yeah, it's there for like a big attack at the point. It happens again. You're not really getting anything except, I can go Megara it out. And I can end up fighting ninjas like that. She's actually very capable. Yeah. Can fight the ninjas anyway. And this added thing just feels odd. It feels artificial and doesn't feel right to me. But some people may disagree, but this is, again, Birds of Prey number 19, Divide and Conquer part 2 of 2, 2-part stories. I think they always fail. But when you don't really have much going on, I guess, there's not much of a story here. But Kelly Thompson writing, Juan Cabal on art, Adriana Lucas on colors, Clayton Coles on letters, and it is a Jessica Burby on editing. So we have her as well. That's who we had last in the Batgirls, right? I think, yes. So there she is. We're learning all these things. But in that, they ended up finding out that the League were trying to get Sin. So why not just draw them out? Why not trap them? So they go to this lake house, and this is a setup. This is a trap to get them there so they can see who's attacking, but also take them down. In the meantime, Barbara, she's watching, pretty much doing an Oracle thing, and then ends up with, killer freaking drones that are just like ridiculous. Again, this is another thing, and if people have read Kelly Thompson's stuff, they'll recognize it, especially from her Black Widow book over at Marvel, which I really liked. But again, I'll get back to that. But she loves to, and I always thought it was Elena Casagrande in that book, but I guess in the script, she must say, draw a full page spread where you have multiple versions of the characters punching and kicking, because this happens in a lot of her books.
Yeah, I've noticed it does.
Yeah, and it happened a lot in that Black Widow. And just to tell people, you actually caught up to talk to me about this, and this happens a lot, right? I always would think that's a art person's signature. That would be something that, but it seems like she really likes that, so she must ask them to do it. But in the meantime, I mean, they're fighting. Sin's doing great. At one point, she's doing a David Lee Roth's flying split in the air to avoid a canary cry. Also, that's basically what Canary's going to do all the time. The canary cry while Oracle ends up putting on her Oracle mask and doing these drones and basically saying, if you don't, get out of here, I'm going to blast you. And then you have it. So they're fighting and, everything's going okay until you end up having Dinah get shot by a sniper. And they keep saying, like, oh, man, they're snipers. And it is this overall narration by Dinah. But I'm like, sniper? I lost track of this setting and what they were doing because not much even was set up last issue. They kind of were pretending, oh, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I'm going to have some pasta and some salad. So then when we get to this, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Then we go to the second story. Again, you have caught up on this. Mm-hmm. Usually we'll have a main story and then the second story, which I think that what they call in the business bullshit is what they call it because it's nothing. It's usually Barda playing video games. It's usually Cass and Barda fighting, sparring, or doing something ridiculously inane that really doesn't matter. And that's what happens here. They go to the scene again. Mm-hmm. And they're with Constantine, who had to pretty much accept a demon.
I couldn't go with any of that.
Yeah, the whole thing of it, though, what are they doing? Like, it doesn't feel like I even know what's happening. And then the golems are going. You end up having this whole play, and it just ends up being, it's busy work. It's as if you gave them a bunch of papers to fill out it's busy work because I'll give Kelly Thompson credit. She wants all the characters to do something.
Right.
They're not doing anything. They're there in the scene and you even have this play with Barter. He has these things with the golems and Barta's upset and saying, hey, do you have any more? Barta sends a boom tube and sends these things to the moon. She says it takes like 8 panels for her to describe it and just say, I'm going to take it to the moon, deal, and they get sent to the moon. Then she threatens Barter, I'm going to take you to the moon. Then we go off to see Cass with this, this Constantine.
Possessed by the demon who's bound, which I'm just like...
Yeah, and the whole thing of it is that it's like this demon saying, let me out, let me go, I'll give you whatever. And she's like, no, come on, no. Hey, look, I'm Constantine again. Look at me. I'm smoking. I'm Constantine. And then, luckily, I'm glad. One thing that Kelly Thompson does bring up is the idea that Spirit World. They're in the scene here, which, again, I don't know much, and it's very ambiguous. But the idea where this demon says, oh, you're going to need my help. Like, there's spirits and things there. I'm like, yeah, say, like, screw you. I was in Spirit World, and I ended up coming out.
She got spirited away.
And yeah, exactly. And she actually then brings it up, but it brings it up in the way of, so to Constantine, what did I tell you in Spirit World? And this demon shucks, and then it pulls out. But the whole thing is just, again, it's busy work. They're just going, you don't even care or know what's happening. And then they just get to this deal where they shove Constantine with this demon through this portal, and that solves the issue. Constantine comes out, and then at the very end, you do have where Cass then says, hey, what did I say? When we went, I guess it was like, not yet. And she's like, right, welcome back, Constantine.
I think that was kind of lame because it's like, this is Constantine. How do you not? He could have gone on a bender and forgot all that. He could have been like, shite, mate. Don't ask me that.
The thing is, it's supposed to be this moment of like, it's
like, if it was something important, I understand, but not yet, really. Like, that's what he said.
It doesn't even matter. So you have this, and they push her into this demon, into a poster. But that just ends the thing that we really didn't know much about. Now, back at the lake house, you end up getting Dinah. She's shot, so you get a freak out by Sin, who then Megara comes out. You have tentacles all over and ends up attacking these ninjas and takes them down. And all this, though, is like just very quick. And the big play here is that Dinah, who is going to be okay, says, oh, man, I was a little scared because when Megara came out, I don't know if that's Megara or Sin. I think they're blurring the lines here. And then asks Sin, are you more Megara or are you more Sin when you attacked? I don't know. Uh-oh. And that's it. I mean, and then you even have like a little bit of a giggle with those two and whatnot. And I'm like, This isn't great.
Canary, you've been shot through the chest. Yes, it's through and through, but that don't mean it's not a gaping wound. You need to go to the hospital or something, or at least get a doctor. I don't think stitching it up is going to fix it.
They just, put some sand on it. But even then, it's like, hey, did you see what happened when Megara came out? And now it is these. Now, again, these are the League of Assassins are coming to get her. They don't just stop when they just send a couple guys. But it seems like they are now. It seems like that's all pushed aside to now think, oh, did you see those guys when they saw Megara? Oh, yeah, they took 3 steps back. I like when
No.
You end
they
up
had all on their face.
Yeah. I like when you have dinosaurs. It's like they took no, they did. There's no like. They ended up backing up because of what? And yeah, the idea that they might be coming now to say, ooh, this Megara, we could worship. It's again, it's just going to set up another story that does nothing. I'm sick of Megara.
Last issue, their whole thing is like, oh, we know they're coming after us. We're going to use, Megara and Canary to put the fear of God into them so they know never to come back. And it's like, oh no, we've actually made them even more horny for us.
And now they want Megara, it seems. And like, oh my God, like almost that we'd given them something new to covet in Megara. So they're going to want Megara. And again, it's just this book. It's just not that good. What happens is Batgirl, not a lot of progression. We have books like JSA earlier in the podcast, too many things going on. So at the end, you get like a little tiny step forward. A lot of these books, this is the biggest problem I have with most of the books out today from Marvel and DC. The idea that we're not getting stories. We're getting little bits and pieces each month, and then the whole of it, you have to wait forever. And then at the end, you forget this and that, and it's just not that great. I mean, the idea of where I would say to somebody, because I see these reviews, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for this book, and I ask, what's the big story that you love from it? And that stuff with, you ended up having maps from the future that use the green to go through time and stuff like that. It's like, really? Really, like none of this really hits. And then you just move on to the next ridiculous thing. And you always have that side story that I do think that Kelly Thompson thinks is like, that's the comic relief. That's the light with the, but it just ends up playing like wasted time and space. But what would you give this?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll just give it a flat 5 because it's not great. I don't want to say it's horrible because it's like a time waster. Like that's the biggest thing I could say about it because it's like, oh hey, we're having some ninja fighting. We have Cassandra escorting a demon in Constantine's body. Big Bar to beat some crap up. But we don't get a lot. But it doesn't do things horribly, but it doesn't do things great.
Yeah, it's weird. You were at issue 19. Mm-hmm. And people like it, right? So if I would say that I'm Kelly Thompson and somebody says, oh, people like it, keep doing what you're doing, I don't know what she's doing. I couldn't explain exactly like what
she's going through the motions.
She's like, okay, we're doing like these, nothing seems to tie in well together. And then when you go with it, I'm like, I don't know exactly what this book is trying to do. So I don't know if it's working or not.
At the beginning, we kind of had something where it's like, oh, we're doing this for Sin, but then we don't explain Sin. We don't do crap with Sin other than Megara.
Now it's just Megara.
And we've just been kicking the can along for the past 19 issues.
I will tell you one thing, though. I do think that this issue kind of gives the idea of something that I've said, I think, last issue. But I do think that somebody did say to Kelly Thompson, you write the worst Barda ever. Barda is actually talking in more full sentences. She's not just grunting out 3-word sentences. She sounds actually like she's doing
like, hey, people prefer Barda and New Gods right now by Randy. Can you do it more like that?
I think that there's something with that or something somebody got to her because in that one bit with Barda, she has sentences longer and better than she's had. It actually sounds like a real person talking and not just a caveman or, as I say, a cavity creep. That's what it always ends up. But even that, it's like, do you want to do this or a quick death on the moon? And death on the moon will be the best I can do for you. I'm like, okay, that's actually a full sentence. Yeah. It actually makes sense. So I do think somebody said to her, yeah, don't make her seem, she's not a cave woman. There never has been. Just, come on.
You're not
is
Tom
doing
King.
A little better.
Come on,
yeah, really. That's more Wonder Woman with that. So, but the same. So all this going on, because Barda was okay in the Mr. Miracle. But again, she wasn't really
talking
that
because
big
the way he wrote Wonder Woman, you just like
Wonder Woman is
the way she talks.
Again, she's like a caveman in that as well. But Yeah, so some of the things are better. I'm going 4.5. I could go with a regular 5.
I do think the art's good, at least.
The art's okay. Yeah, the art's okay. It's just nothing really goes on. And when you go to that Barda cast story with Constantine, you don't even, because of how you set it up, you don't even get a good Constantine.
No, he's not even in it for more
it's
than a page.
Constantine. So
I still don't get it. Like, why do you got to transport a demon inside your own body?
That's how they said they had to do it. That's the only reason why they're doing it, because they said because I don't know.
Because you just wanted to have Cass and Barda escort him, and it's just like,
but you didn't even have fun with it.
Yeah, well, like, to me, it just would have been so much better if you just been like, hey, Barda's doing something, hint, new gods, like reference new gods, and then Cass is doing something with her mother. They're gone for this issue. Like, I mean, and just focus on the other stuff. And
Cass is on a train. She's missing. Yeah. But, no, they just end up having to do goofy things.
She's somewhere in some cave.
Yeah. Well, they could have played video games. They do that a lot. But, so it's a disappointment. But it keeps going on. So maybe
I'm waiting.
I'm waiting.
Next time. I guarantee you, it's going to be on the chopping block soon. I guarantee you.
And it probably will be. But people seem to like it. I don't know. We'll have to get. Well,
here's the thing. I love Birds of Prey, but like this is just either they need to get a new writer or they need to just end it and give it to somebody else down the road.
Yeah, I don't know. I think again they are letting people kind of take over, but usually something like this that's gone 19 and we already solicit out, it'll just end and we'll just go and move on.
I don't know. Maybe 21. Maybe issue 21. It seems like that's where everything gets to nowadays.
I think that it might be solicited already to 22, so we'll have to see. I don't know, but I don't think the book's in any problems. I see people loving it. I think we're going to have it for a while, but we'll see. It's nonsense, but that's it. So that is it for the show. I'm going to go off and let everybody know what we are doing next week, but thanks for joining me. As always, Zach, and if people should know from the podcast, me and Zach do a year one podcast on the Patreon at patreon.com/weirdscience, which we also do when we end up having the Batman and Robin year one. We'll be doing the Black Lightning as well when that comes out. Is it Mr. Terrific, right? Mr. Terrific year one.
Yeah.
We'll be doing when that comes out, but we also do other things like Batgirl. We did the Batgirl year one, Robin. We just finished Metamorpho. We're deciding what we're going to do next. And we also have an Indie Comics podcast that is exclusive on the Patreon as well. So check those out if you can. But we will go. Thanks for joining me, Zach.
No problem.
And I'm going to come back with what we're talking about next week. All right. And that is it for the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on with me. We're going to have a rotating cast. There's still some people waiting in the wings. Some names bigger than the next. Guest stars that you'll be astounded by the end. Actually, if you've been listening to the podcast for quite some time, there will be some names that might come up that you have never, ever heard before on our show. So that might prove to be very interesting. Maybe it'll be a disaster, but that might be interesting too. I'll tell you, that might be something that could be fun. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying talking to so many people. It's a weird way of reviewing. It is a weird way of editing. I remember when Eric left that first time, I got used to it. I'm not used to it yet. I have like 20 different files, things all over the place with this. Oh my goodness gracious. But we're going to end up making it work. We'll try to make it even better than it has been. And I mean like the past 2 weeks, but also just something different. Again, I don't want to sit there in 6 months. In my mind, I'd probably be like, man, this is so much better. But I do want it to be something different. I do think that even if Eric stayed, we were due for a bit of a change, a little shakeup, maybe change some things up because we'd been doing the things the same way for so long. So with all that, what are we going to talk about next week? Well, you asked me that and I got to load it up is what I have to do, is why I'm stalling. That was stalling. See, we have Absolute Superman number 5. That will be on our Absolute DC podcast / YouTube video channel thing. Because we are, and I say we, I mean me and Gray, will be reviewing Absolute Superman number 5 live on YouTube at 7:15 Eastern Standard Time on Friday. Every Friday that a Absolute book comes out, 7:15, we will be there talking about it. Gray may not be able to get to everyone, and lo and behold, he may tell me this week that it's one that he can't, but if that's the case, somebody else will mix in. But for the most part, it will be Me and Gray. We also have Action Comics number 1084. Everybody's been waiting to see what gives with that John Ridley story, right? Oh my God, that superstars nonsense. Yeah. I don't think anybody cares about that, but we'll be talking about that. I don't know who the we will be. That would probably be something that I might ask Rocky to join me and talk about. But we also have Aquaman number 3. That is the Jeremy Adams deal. And we'll see what happens in that other place there. The other place of the blue, the clear. Yeah, it got a little bit wacky for that second issue, but we'll see what gives in that. We have Batman and Robin number 19, my favorite. Oh my, we'll see if that old Memento, what that guy's up to. He's up to no good, you know that. But we'll see how that, I believe, probably will be about wrapping up that arc. So that'll be pretty cool. I know that me and Tom will be talking about Batman Dark Patterns number 4. And Tom will laugh, but hopefully a little less time is what we were told. We were told that we were a little long in the tongue, is what they say. That's what they said about Gene Simmons. And look at that guy. That guy got a lot of money, so that's not bad. We also have Black Lightning, number 5. I believe that ends it, but yeah, that'll be a weird one. Again, that's one of the books that I consider me and Eric that we would talk about. And I say that meaning I don't think anybody else is reading it, but I'll get somebody to talk to me about that. We have DC versus Vampires, World War V, number 7. It's almost to a point where maybe, I don't know. I don't like that. It's so boring. You had that little hiatus where you had that one-shot deal. So maybe, just maybe, Matthew Rosenberg got an idea for a story to come back. I hope it does something. I don't know. And then Green Lantern Corps. Number 2, I had said to some people, and actually some people have even made videos after I said it to them. Not saying they stole my ideas because I didn't make a video, but the idea that I think that book is more of a Morgan Hampton book than a Jeremy Adams book. And I think that it's going to come to play. I think that we're going to start seeing it more and more, that it isn't necessarily Jeremy Adams, who a lot of people really, really like, but I like that first issue. I thought it was pretty good, and I'm looking forward to see what's going to go on in this one. On the cover, you have a Guy Gardner, or as us fans say, Guy Gardner, and then also Kilowog. Us fans often say Kilowog. Yes, so that are the books. That are the books, baby. 2 of those books, besides the Absolute Superman. Absolute Superman will be on its own thing. But 2 of the other books will be on our Patreon Spotlight. It usually comes out Thursday. It's going to be at times maybe Friday. I don't know, because of the idea of getting people to record and scheduling. If I end up having somebody do it and they're like, oh my God, I can't record till Friday, then we're kind of up a crick that rhymes with it. But it'll just come out. I like to have that regular podcast, The Spotlight, come out on Thursday night, but that might, be a thing that at times change, but it is on the Patreon. It is the Patreon Spotlight, patreon.com/weirdscience. I think that people might realize right now it is late, and I was going to be in bed at this point if my son wasn't making a racket. But this is it. That's the end. So thanks, everybody. I really do appreciate all of the people who have reached out, said that they are going to miss Eric, but they're happy that the podcast is going to continue on. I will try my best to make it worthwhile to check it out. Like I said, give me a couple weeks, a little growing pains, a lot of scheduling, and a lot of just trying to figure out how I can do this in certain segments. I could do whatever with everybody else. It's when I have to talk like this by myself, I hate it. I hate it. So I talk at myself a lot during the week, but I just don't like talking on. I like to do a reactionary type conversation, not just me talking, because what happens is I start to wander very quickly because I don't know what to say. So I just make up stuff. Like I'll say randomly while I was recording, I think it was Ruben's mail, I needed a drink. Earlier in the deal with the news, I got a tickle in my throat, a little tickle it was. And I needed a drink. Well, I'm just rapid firing recording these. So I go and I'm doing the mail and I got the tickle back again. I needed a quick drink. So I grabbed this drink. It was not a drink. I know what it might have been. I don't want to say because of the Nick Pit, but boy, it didn't hit me right the second time, if you know what I mean. It was not good. It had tea bags in it, though. But again, maybe that should have been a hint. The worst is I'm like, do I have tea in the house? This thing has tea bags in it. Where do they come from? Actually, I do. I made tea earlier. I thought it was the tea. I go to grab it. I'm like, this isn't hot, but maybe it just cooled down. I'm like, nope, that was not tea. It was steeping, but it was not tea. I don't know. Yeah, I do. But there you go. Little disgusting talk at the end, right? There you go. Eric always said that I had the knack to disgust. But with that, also, I do like the band, The Knack. And also, with that, anybody who thinks that My Sharona is their favorite 80s song, screw you. It came out in 79. You're wrong. So there's a little bit of tidbit there. This is what I'm talking about. But I'm going to get out of here. And I am actually going to play our traditional ending song. I'm going to try to change it up. Obviously, there's things in it that don't make sense anymore. But I do like it. And I know that Yaya likes it as well. So I'm going to play it this week. I will change it up probably next week. But thanks, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Everybody in the Get Fresh crew, all the Patreons, all that rolled up into one. Thanks, and I will talk to you later.
Every other show sucks. That's why you're listening to us. Every other show sucks. We're the only one that isn't us. So thank you for being smart. From the bottom of our heart, thank you for being smart. 'Cause everything that us just thinks like a fart. They stink like a fart. Sings like a fart, like a fart. They stink like a fart. Let's go! 2, 3, 4, 5. Eric has been comics. Most of his life 9, 8, 7, 6. Jim can really act like a shut your mouth. Every other show sucks. That's why you're listening to us. Every other show sucks. We're the only one that isn't us. So thank you for being smart. From the bottom of our heart, thank you for being smart. 'Cause everything about us just stinks like a fart. They stink like a fart. Stinks like a fart, like a fart. They stink like a fart.
The Wolfman.